Chapter 352. Do you still remember the name Yu Xian? In front of the grave, Chu Bei stared calmly at Chu Bei as he spoke calmly. Yu Xian. Hearing the name from Chu Bei's mouth, Chen Nan repeated it. He then closed his eyes in agony and hugged his head with both hands. Dead. The person I love the most is dead. Why did you bring me back to life? Do you want a useless person like me to continue my miserable life in regret? Chen Nan seemed to have remembered something, and his pained expression was filled with remorse. Looking at Chen Nan, who was hugging his head and howling, Chu Bei shook his head and sighed. He was indeed a pitiful person. In order to save him, this girl called Yu Xian was killed by the devil with a single palm strike. And he could only watch helplessly as his beloved girl died. He was powerless. Later on, he went to seek revenge on the demon's descendant, and was defeated and killed. Do you want to see her one more time? To be exact, do you want to be with her forever? After Chen Nan had choked on his sobs, Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back and smiled. You! What do you mean? Yu Xian is still alive! Hearing Chu Bei's words, Chen Nan's empty eyes suddenly showed a trace of life. His two hands firmly grabbed Chu Bei's arm, and veins appeared in his eyes. She's not dead. These 4 words floated out of Chu Bei's mouth. She's still alive! Please tell me, where is she? Where is she? Chen Nan roared emotionally. His voice was filled with excitement, and his body could not help but tremble. Even though she's not dead, her situation is not good. As he spoke, Chu Bei raised his right hand and a glowing purple ring appeared in his palm. If you want to see her, you must first have enough power. Power? Hee hee. 10,000 years ago, I was already a cripple, what more now? Chen Nan laughed at himself. Fate has brought us together. I can give you my inheritance and I can also bring you to her. However, when your cultivation reaches the heavens, you must agree to my request. As for what this request is, I will tell you when the time is right. Chu Bei deliberately put on a purposeful expression as he spoke. Only by speaking with a purpose and a tone of transaction would the other party be more likely to let down their guard. As long as you let me see you sin, don't mention one request, I'll agree to 10 of your requests. After hearing Chu Bei's words, Chen Nan nodded without hesitation. Chu Bei chuckled. With a wave of his right hand, the proxy ring flew towards Chen Nan. Put it on. With a blood contract, you will receive my inheritance and embark on a shortcut to cultivation. Since you've obtained my inheritance, you can be considered my successor. As for how you address me, it's up to you. Chen Nan stared blankly for a moment. When he came back to his senses, he hurriedly shouted, Master! As he shouted, Chen Nan took the ring and bit his index finger, dripping a drop of blood into the ring. The host has successfully signed a contract with the first-level proxy Chen Nan. Level 14 Commodity Authority Activation Progress, 15%. Level 1 Proxy Gift Pack issued. Almost at the same time, the system's voice rang in Chu Bei's mind. Since you've already addressed me as master, then I'll give you another gift. Chu Bei opened the proxy gift pack. Within it was a sparkling and translucent elixir. What a rich elixir aroma! Chen Nan took the elixir and sniffed it. After exchanging glances with Chu Bei, he threw it into his mouth. My body! Soon, Chen Nan noticed the changes in his body. After swallowing the elixir, every cell, every bone, and every piece of flesh in his body was crazily strengthened. Master, after this disciple ate the elixir you gave me, I seem to have gained control of a mysterious energy. After a long while, Chen Nan stretched his body and looked at Chu Bei in astonishment. Then, an eager expression appeared on his face. After eating the elixir, his body structure seemed to have undergone some strange changes. His body could actually change according to his thoughts. This change was not a change in appearance, but a change in essence. With a thought, his body elementalized and turned into a flash of golden light. He could feel that every cell contained a terrifying energy. However, this energy was still in its embryonic stage, waiting for him to develop it. The elixir of light, an immortal elixir from the outland, Chu Bei looked at Qin Nan calmly. Now, is there an additional mysterious energy in your body? This energy is abnormally large and permeates throughout your body. Qin Nan nodded and turned back into his human form. He pointed his finger, and a flash of golden light swept toward the coffin he crawled out of. In an instant, the coffin was penetrated, leaving a round hole. From now on, this ability is considered your innate ability. Use it well and cultivate. When the day comes, no matter how big the world is, you'll be able to elementalize it with a thought, Chu Bei said seriously with narrowed eyes. Qin Nan was silent for a moment, and nodded seriously. Master, can you tell me why I was buried here? Why can I be resurrected? Why are the gods of the East and the gods of the West buried together? Why? Looking at Qin Nan, who threw out 3,000 whys in one breath, Chu Bei picked his ears helplessly. I'll answer some of your questions. As for the rest, you'll have to figure it out yourself. When your strength reaches a certain level, all problems will be solved. This is also my hope for you. I hope that there will be a day when I need you. 10,000 years ago, the fantasy immortal continent and the fantasy magic continent broke through the strait during a violent earthquake and connected. Because the two continents had different civilizations and beliefs, a large-scale war broke out between the two continents. In that war, corpses were strewn everywhere and blood flowed like rivers. Countless experts fell. In order to reduce the casualties, the top experts of the two continents had no choice but to sign a ceasefire agreement. Eastern and Western cultures mixed and lived in peace. In the end, the two continents merged into one and changed their name to the Tianyuan continent, which is the current continent. Yours saying that the gods of the East and West also participated in that war, and their descendants buried their bodies in the cemetery of the gods and devils? Qin Nan guessed as he looked at the tombstones around him. The cemetery of the gods and devils had already appeared 1,000 years before that war. Chu Bei shook his head. As for the secret of the cemetery of the gods and devils, you'll have to find it yourself. I can only tell you that their deaths are related to heaven. Heaven? Qin Nan's mouth opened slightly. Heaven! Chu Bei pointed at the distant sky. Second question, how did you come back to life? 10,000 years ago, after you died, two people used heaven-defying methods to bury you here and used the power of the gods and devils to come back to life. Who are they? Qin Nan asked. One of them is Qingzhan, your father. The other is Dugubatian, one of the ancient taboo gods. Chu Bei said calmly. Dugubatian? Why did he help me? Is he acquainted with my father? Qin Nan's confusion deepened. This is about your second identity. You'll have to find it yourself. Chu Bei smiled at Qin Nan, pretending to be mysterious. Master, through the information given to me by this ring, I only know that you're a merchant. Apart from that, can you tell me anything else about yourself? Qin Nan took a deep breath, his expression very serious. The person in front of him who had been guarding his grave waiting for him to come back to life had too many secrets. Apart from knowing what happened 10,000 years ago, he also seemed to be able to predict the future. Vaguely, he had a feeling that he had become a chess piece, and the person in front of him was the chess player. However, this chess piece had yet to mature. The person in front of him was waiting quietly, and had even given him a great opportunity. You'll know about your master's origins one day. Chu Bei continued to put on an unfathomable expression, and introduced the cultivation system of this world to Qin Nan. In the current Tianyuan continent, cultivators, dragon knights, magicians, Eastern warriors, and Western warriors all have their own standards. In order to compare their strength, they are divided into 5 ranks. Cultivators, foundation establishment, chi nurturing, essence condensation, core formation, and nascent soul. Dragon knights, earth dragon knights, flying dragon knights, lesser dragon knights, giant dragon knights, and holy dragon knights. Magicians, quasi-magician, intermediate magician, advanced magician, great magician, and magister. Eastern warriors, refining essence into chi, Xiantian realm, sword chi out of the body, refining chi into spirit, spirit solidification. Western warriors, swordsmith, swordmaster, 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 swordmaster. With his hands behind his back, Chu Bei calmly explained the cultivation levels 10,000 years later to Chen Nan. After the 5th rank, there should be even higher realms. Chen Nan frowned. At the very least, his father Chen Zhan's cultivation had far surpassed the 5th rank of the Eastern warriors. The cultivation levels I mentioned earlier were only the cultivation levels of the Tianyuan continent. The 5th rank is already a peerless expert in the Tianyuan continent. After breaking through the 5th rank is the true martial realm, which is the 6th rank. 6th step, this is already the highest rank on your continent. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest. After breaking through the 6th rank, you will be taken to the heavenly realm. After that, the immortal martial realm, divine king, divine emperor, heaven realm. According to the information given by the system, the 6th rank of the divine tomb realm was the true martial realm, which was equivalent to level 10, which was the battle saint of the battle break realm and the shrouding sky realm. The 7th rank of the immortal martial realm was equivalent to level 11, which was the battle emperor of the battle break realm and the divine king of the shrouding sky realm. After that, the 8th rank of the divine king was equivalent to level 12, which was the half sage of the shrouding sky. The 9th rank of the divine emperor was equivalent to level 13, which was the sage of the shrouding sky. The 1st rank of the heaven realm was equivalent to level 14, which was the sage king of the shrouding sky. The 1st rank of the heaven realm was equivalent to level 15, which was the great sage of the shrouding sky. Task 2, host receives the Hoi Bao. Not long after Chu Bei finished speaking, the system's voice rang in his mind. At that moment, a red dot appeared on the system map, which represented the location of the Hoi Bao. Master, why don't you take me to see Yusen first? Chen Nan looked at Chu Bei with great anticipation. Before that, I'll take you to the capital of Chu country for a walk. Chu Bei patted Chen Nan's shoulder. Naturally, he had to prioritize his matters. Chapter 353. Master, the innate ability you bestowed upon me is really useful. In the blue sky, a golden light followed closely behind a rainbow as it flashed past. Chen Nan's face was filled with joy. The cemetery of gods and devils was located in the center of the Tianyuan continent. Ever since he used the innate ability he received, he had only spent half a day to reach the center of the eastern region. The Tianyuan continent was millions of kilometers away. If it wasn't for the fact that he hadn't developed this ability yet, he was confident that he could cross the Tianyuan continent in a single thought. Master, why did you stop? Looking at the figure in front of him who had suddenly stopped, Chen Nan asked in confusion. Look below. Chu Bei's lips moved slightly. Following the direction of Chu Bei's finger, Chen Nan lowered his head to look. With one look, his expression suddenly changed. A clear river meandered through the mountains and converged into a pool right below them. Splash! At this moment, a young girl was swimming in the pool like a fish. The water that splashed out from time to time looked like sparkling pearls under the sunlight. The young girl was 16 or 17 years old. Her long black hair was dripping wet and draped over her shoulders. Her jade-like cheeks were dripping with water. Her unparalleled appearance coupled with her quick-witted eyes, long eyelashes, and straight nose made her look like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. Master, do you know her? Chen Nan coughed dryly, his face filled with curiosity. This scene is shockingly similar to the plot. Chu Bei ignored Chen Nan and muttered to himself before diving downwards. Master, what do you mean by that? Chen Nan's imagination ran wild, his face filled with even more confusion. Ah, who are you people? Men! The young girl in the pool discovered Chu Bei and Chen Nan. After a sharp scream, she quickly put on a thin gauze dress. Her quick-witted eyes were filled with fear. Soon, dozens of people appeared beside the pool amidst the young girl's scream. Capture these two villains! The young girl coldly glanced at Chu Bei and Chen Nan and scolded. Water spirits that wander between heaven and earth, please heed my call. Water Dragon Wave. The three magicians took the initiative to attack. Immediately, the water in the pool boiled. With a splash, a water dragon rose from the bottom of the pool and attacked Chu Bei and Qinan. Chi-la! Chu Bei waved his hand, and a dazzling golden light swept past the water dragon. When the water dragon, which was nearly 10 meters tall, encountered the golden light, it dissipated into the air as if it had met its natural enemy. This? Who exactly are you? The young girl seemed to have seen through Chu Bei's prowess. She took a step back and hid in the crowd. Her face was filled with resentment as she gritted her teeth. Chu Yu? Chu Bei said indifferently. Chu Yu was the youngest daughter of the Chu country's emperor. She was the daughter of the Chu country's emperor. How do you know my name? The girl's eyes widened. Chen Nan's face was also filled with confusion. I was just about to go to your house to get something. I didn't expect to meet you here first. Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back, looking like an immortal who had achieved the Tao. He stared at the girl calmly and recalled the plot with a smile. Is the purpose of your trip this time for the blazing fire immortal lotus? How do you know all this? You. Who are you? Hearing Chu Bei's words, Chu Yu was clearly flustered. Her voice trembled slightly. The attendants by her side were all death warriors specially trained by her imperial father. They were loyal and devoted to her. Tomorrow was her father's 60th birthday. In order to show her filial piety, she deliberately snuck out of the palace to pick the legendary blazing fire immortal lotus as a birthday gift. They would arrive at their destination in less than 3 kilometers. Before getting down to business, she wanted to relax and coincidentally came across a pool of water. Who would have thought that in the middle of her bath, 2 villains of unknown origins would descend from the sky? Moreover, one of them had unfathomable strength. What was more frightening was that the other party actually knew everything about her. Who I am isn't important. What's important is that I can help you get the blazing fire immortal lotus, Chu Bei said calmly. I can get the blazing fire immortal lotus even without your help. Chu Yu snorted coldly. After she finished speaking, she glanced at the guards around her. Ignore them and continue on our way. Master, aren't we going to the Chu Kingdom's palace? Seeing Chu Bei following behind the group, Chen Nan couldn't help but ask. Don't worry, I have my own plans. Chu Bei smiled and continued to walk leisurely. Princess, these 2 people have been following us. What should we do? A magician leaned in front of Chu Yu and whispered. Ignore them, just let them follow us. A trace of craftiness flashed across Chu Yu's eyes. When the old man comes, I'll definitely make them pay a painful price for their previous actions. An hour later, Chu Yu and her group arrived at their destination. A volcano stood 100 meters in front of them. The volcano's crater was surrounded by layers of smoke, and magma seemed like it would erupt at any time. The closer they got to the crater, the hotter the air became. It made them feel stuffy, and the rocks under their feet also became hotter. What a rich fragrance! The old man didn't lie to me. There's a blazing fire immortal lotus in the crater of the volcano. Chu Yu rubbed her nose in intoxication. Waves of smoke floated out from the crater of the volcano from time to time. The smoke was filled with a rich fragrance that made one feel refreshed and refreshed. Their worries and fatigue instantly disappeared. Princess, I heard that all treasures are protected by spirit beasts. Do you think there's a spirit beast protecting the crater of the volcano? A guard reminded her. It's fine. The old man said that it's just a small snake. Chu Yu waved her hand carelessly. Then, she pointed at a ball of fiery red light on the cliff inside the crater of the volcano. Go and pluck that blazing fire immortal lotus for me now. Yes, princess. After receiving Chu Yu's instructions, the guard respectfully responded. Soon after, he took out an anti-poison veil and covered his mouth and nose. Then, he carefully walked through the thick smoke toward the crater of the volcano. Master, I have a feeling that there's a tyrannical spirit beast in the crater of the volcano. At least, it's far from what these guys can handle. Chen Nan tilted his head and looked at Chu Bei. Do you want to help them? In response to Chen Nan's kindness, Chu Bei smiled. Didn't you hear that girl say that she doesn't need us at all? We'll just watch. Rumble. Just when the guard was 1 meter away from the crater of the volcano suddenly shook. Then, a strange roar came from the crater of the volcano and floated in the air. In the next moment, a huge monster emerged from the crater of the volcano. Princess, this isn't the small snake you mentioned earlier. Looking at the huge monster that emerged from the crater of the volcano, the guard's pupils suddenly shrank. He was so scared that his legs went weak. The only thing he saw was a huge snake head. It was the size of a house, and its 2 blood-red eyes were the size of a wash basin. Amidst the terrified screams, the ferocious snake head stuck out its tongue. Before the guard could react, he was swallowed by the huge snake. Then, there was the sound of chewing. That old man is too good at deceiving people. How is this small? Chuyu also looked at the mountain-like giant python in front of her and subconsciously swallowed her saliva. Her voice trembled. Meeting the giant python's blood-red eyes, although Chuyu was nervous, she forced herself to remain calm. Everyone, don't be afraid. This snake is just a little bigger and doesn't have much strength. Listen to my instructions and attack it together. In response to Chuyu's words, although the magicians among the guards were full of doubt, they still chanted incantations. As for the martial artists, they all drew their swords and began to accumulate power. Chu Bei, who was not far away, retreated to the side with Chen Nan. He had an indifferent expression on his face as if he was watching a show. In terms of strength, even if Chuyu's side attacked 10 times, it would not be enough to deal with this giant python. Attack! At Chuyu's command, the guards attacked at the same time. Several fireballs and a large number of flashing wind blades flew towards the giant python. However, when this overwhelming attack landed on the giant python's body, it was like scratching an itch. Only a series of clanking sounds were left behind, and there were no wounds. Squeak, squeak! The giant python seemed to have felt provoked. It opened its huge mouth and revealed its white venomous fangs. The fangs were as sharp as swords and were 1/2 meter long. They were ferocious and terrifying. Everyone, stay alert! Meeting the giant python's mocking gaze, Chuyu only felt a chill quickly spread from her head to her toes. Her heart suddenly tightened. But just as she finished speaking, the giant python suddenly inhaled and then spewed out raging flames. The 2 magicians at the front had just started chanting incantations. Before the light blue magic barrier could form, they were burned into charred corpses by the raging flames. Then, the giant python's huge tail swung again. With a bang, 3 martial artists were smashed into meat paste. Blood splattered across the sky. Retreat! After witnessing the terror of the giant python once again, Chuyu screamed and turned to escape without caring about the others. Among her guards, both the magicians and martial artists were at the 2nd level. But with such strength, they were no different from ants in front of the giant python. Are you 2 just going to watch the show like this? You're not going to help at all. Chuyu ran to Chu Bei and Chen Nan's side and said fiercely, "In front of this beast, we're tied to the same boat. If we die, you can forget about leaving alive." Thinking of the methods the other party had displayed at the pool, Chuyu turned her attention to Chu Bei and Chen Nan. "You said earlier that you didn't need our help, right?" Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest. He had no intention of interfering. Chuyu glared at Chu Bei, then turned her gaze back to the guards and ordered, "Everyone, keep your distance from it. Focus your attacks on its eyes." The guards received the order again, and they all took out their strong bows and crossbows from their backs. Shio, shio, shio! Amidst the sound of air being pierced, rows of eagle feather arrows shot towards the giant python's eyes like locusts. Not only humans, the eyes were also the weakest part of beasts. The giant python twisted its body crazily. Although it successfully dodged most of the arrows were like rain. There were still 2 or 3 arrows mixed with magic that hit its face-sized eyeballs. Squeak, squeak! The giant python's eyes were bloodshot. Accompanied by a painful howl, its huge body leaped up. Then, it smashed towards the guards. Boom! With an earth-shattering sound, the ground cracked, the mountain shook, and magma burst out of the volcano. Under this attack, half of the guards were smashed into meat paste before they could react. Chapter 354. Princess, this beast isn't something we can deal with. The remaining guards all had terrified expressions on their faces as they turned around and fled, completely ignoring Chu Yu's orders. In the face of death, there was no need to talk about being a ruler and her subjects. All of you deserve to die. Chu Yu gritted her teeth in anger as she watched the guards flee in all directions. She couldn't help but shiver when she saw the terrifying cold light from the python's sharp fangs. If the two of you can help me deal with this beast, I'll ask Imperial Father to fulfill all of your requests when we return to the palace. The python seemed to have set its sights on Chu Yu. Its human-like eyes were filled with mockery and ridicule. Chu Yu's body trembled as she hid behind a huge rock. Her face was filled with anxiety. Right now, these two villains were her last straw of hope. If even they couldn't deal with this beast, then she could only end up dead. Rocks flew in all directions amidst the rumbling. The python seemed to regard Chu Yu, Chu Bei, and the others as its prey. It swung its tail and opened its ferocious bloody mouth, but it didn't attack. Lord Divine Beast, we're just passing by. If we've disturbed your sleep, we'll leave right away. Chu Yu poked her head out from behind the huge rock and put her hands together in a pleading gesture. The python let out a terrifying roar. Its eyes were filled with excitement. It lowered its huge head and its sharp fangs were suspended above the rock. However, it did not pay any attention to Chu Yu. Instead, it locked its gaze onto Chu Bei. It seems to have its eyes on you. You'd better behave yourselves. I'll leave first. Chu Yu shrunk her neck and tiptoed backward. Chirp chirp, the python spat out its red tongue and hissed with ferocity. Go back! However, just as the python was about to attack Chu Bei, 3 light syllables rang out in the air. At this moment, Chu Bei's entire body burst forth with an unparalleled aura. This aura wasn't condensed from the true martial qi between heaven and earth. Instead, it came from his own kingly aura. The moment the syllables fell, the air became silent. The python's fangs were also suspended in the air. In the next moment, the giant python's basin-sized pupils suddenly shrank. 2 streaks of white appeared. It was a kind of fear that came from the bottom of its heart. How? How is this possible? Chu Yu, who hadn't retreated more than 10 meters, opened her eyes wide and murmured incessantly. The insufferably arrogant giant python was now like a mouse that had seen a cat, scurrying back into the crater. You! How did you do it? Returning to her senses, Chu Yu quickly walked in front of Chu Bei and impatiently asked the question in her heart. A giant serpent that might have the strength of a Tier 4 giant serpent actually fled without a fight after being scolded by this person in front of him. Chu Bei did not answer Chu Yu's question. Instead, he walked towards the mouth of the volcano at a leisurely pace. What's so great about that smug look of yours? In response to Chu Bei's disregard, Chu Yu snorted angrily and immediately followed after him. Not far away, the guards who had fled earlier also turned back one after another, quickly following behind Chu Yu. That's the blazing celestial lotus that I want! Arriving at the edge of the crater, Chu Yu was the first to call out. Then, she reached out her hand and excitedly pointed in a direction. Her voice was filled with joy. A spirit plant that was about half a meter tall, with a fiery red body and 9 crystal-clear red leaves growing on its stem. The flower at the top was shaped like a lotus flower that was dazzling like a jade carving. It was growing on the cliff. Chu Bei glanced at Chu Yu indifferently. Then, he plucked the blazing celestial lotus and felt a warm feeling in his hand. Although I don't know how you scared that bastard away, it's just a scare without any danger. Chu Yu looked at Chu Bei approvingly and said, Give me the celestial lotus. As for the disrespect you guys showed me earlier, I won't pursue it with you. After speaking, Chu Yu looked magnanimous and reached out her hand towards the blazing celestial lotus in Chu Bei's hand. However, just as Chu Yu's fair hand was about to grab the blazing celestial lotus in Chu Bei's hand, the blazing celestial lotus disappeared. When she looked at Chu Bei again, the latter narrowed his eyes and had a playful expression. Chu Bei's playful gaze made Chu Yu's hair stand on end. She gritted her teeth and probed. You can't be thinking of taking the celestial lotus for yourself, right? Don't even think about it. If it wasn't for me, you guys would have already been buried in the mouth of that little snake. Now you still have the face to ask for this celestial lotus? Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile. You, damn it! Hearing this, Chu Yu was furious, and her face turned red. You're getting bolder and bolder. You actually dared to sneak out of the palace. Furthermore, you even came to such a dangerous place. With your mediocre skills, even if you had a few lives, it wouldn't be enough. Just as Chu Yu was at a loss and could only sulk, a long whistle came from afar. The sound was like rumbling thunder, reverberating in the air for a long time. Master, you're finally here! Hearing the sudden voice and looking at the middle-aged man in loose robes who was getting closer and closer, Chu Yu's face was filled with joy, as if she had seen her savior. Didn't I tell you that this celestial lotus was guarded by a fierce snake? Zhuge Qingfeng's face darkened. Master, didn't you say that it was a little snake? I almost lost my life here because of that sentence. Chu Yu pouted and said angrily. I just said it casually. You actually took it seriously. Zhuge Qingfeng coughed dryly. Don't tell me you've already fought with that beast? I've already chased it away. Chu Yu nodded. Chased away by you? The corner of Qin Nan's mouth twitched slightly. Finally, he could not help but say, You're really shameless. Chu Yu glared fiercely at Qin Nan. After letting out a cold snort, she pointed at Chu Bei and Qin Nan. Master, not only did these two bullies bully me, they also stole the blazing celestial lotus. Master, help me take them down right now. I want to take them back and castrate them. Her voice was filled with threat. Chu Yu proudly raised her little head, her eyes filled with provocation. Her confidence came entirely from her master, who was a fourth-stage Mahayana realm existence. One step further, and he would be a fifth-stage peerless expert. Although the methods of the person in front of her were a little strange, in her opinion, he was far from being a match for her master. You still want to castrate me? The corner of Chu Bei's mouth twitched. He had already begun to plan how to teach this little demon princess a lesson. As for Qin Nan, he had already clenched his fists, which were faintly flickering with golden light. Hand over the blazing celestial lotus and leave quickly. Zhuge Qingfeng glanced at Chu Bei, then looked back in the direction they came from. His expression was a little hasty. Chu Bei did not say anything. Instead, he looked at Zhuge Qingfeng with a faint smile. Do you want me to do it? Zhuge Qingfeng frowned. His voice was low as his aura burst forth. Swoosh! 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 At that moment, 3 black shadows flashed 100 meters away and swept over quickly. I didn't expect them to come so quickly. Damn it! Zhuge Qingfeng ignored Chu Bei. He took a step and appeared in front of Chu Yu, protecting her behind him. Master, who are they? Looking at the 3 masked men in black, Chu Yu could not help but ask. She could faintly feel the terrifying aura from them. Any one of the 3 men's aura was no weaker than her master's. In other words, these 3 masked men were 4th-stage Mahayana realm martial artists. If I'm not mistaken, they should be from the Baiwen nation. Zhuge Qingfeng looked at the 3 masked men in front of him cautiously. He felt that someone was following him on the way here, so after finding Chu Yu, he wanted to take her away immediately. Unexpectedly, the other party was not slow at all. Before he could take Chu Yu away, they had already caught up with him. Chapter 355. You sure run fast! At the edge of the volcanic crater, a masked man stared coldly at Zhuge Qingfeng. His voice carried a mocking tone as he waved the sword in his hand and slashed at Zhuge Qingfeng. Looking at the masked man, Zhuge Qingfeng frowned. He immediately moved his feet and hurriedly dodged to the side with Chu Yu. Don't worry about me. You go first. The masked man's sword slashed through the air, but the second slash came. The sword emitted a faint green light and slashed diagonally at Zhuge Qingfeng's waist. Wherever the green light passed, a deep gully was left on the ground. After pushing Chuyu to the side, Zhuge Qingfeng no longer dodged. He pulled out the thin sword at his waist and began to fight with the masked man. Spiritual energy surged one after another. In an instant, the two of them intertwined with various lights like fireworks. It was extremely beautiful. Water spirits that wander between heaven and earth, please listen to my call, Frost Thorn. At this moment, the other masked man suddenly chanted an incantation. Then, 3 cold ice spears quickly appeared in front of him. Swoosh! Swoosh! Under the illumination of the sun, the 3 ice spears shot towards Zhuge Qingfeng from different directions, carrying a bright radiance like rainbows in the sky. Clang! Zhuge Qingfeng stepped on the ground and his body suddenly rose into the air. Then, he swung his sword and the 3 ice spears shattered into countless pieces. Explode! The masked magician let out a loud shout, and the shattered ice shards suddenly exploded with a terrifying energy. Suddenly, Zhuge Qingfeng's face turned pale and he spat out blood. At this moment, the third masked man who had been waiting for a long time threw the spear in his hand. In the air, the spear tore through the void and arrived in an instant. Zhuge Qingfeng immediately blocked with his sword. Even if he blocked the spear, he still could not dissipate the force on it. Under the huge force, Zhuge Qingfeng's chest caved in. His entire body flew out like a cannonball and landed heavily on the ground, creating a half-meter deep crater. Master! Chuyu shouted and quickly jumped into the crater to help Zhuge Qingfeng out. She used a little spiritual energy in her body to heal him. Didn't I ask you to leave? Zhuge Qingfeng's face was pale. After berating her, he pushed Chuyu away. Get out of here! Then, he struggled to straighten his body. He held his sword in front of his chest and coldly stared at the 3 masked men. Baiwen Nation is despicable! Not only did Chuyu not leave, she even took 2 steps forward to fight side by side with Zhuge Qingfeng. Father will definitely avenge us! Looking at Chuyu's stubborn expression, Zhuge Qingfeng shook his head and sighed. He knew that his disciple was determined to stay. I didn't expect to earn another kill, the masked man sneered. Their original target for this trip was Zhuge Qingfeng. Who would have thought that the princess of the Chu kingdom, who rarely left the palace, would also come along? I didn't expect you to be so benevolent. You didn't abandon your master. At this moment, Chu Bei leisurely walked in front of Chuyu, his eyes filled with praise. You bastard! Do you think they will let you go after killing us? You're about to die, yet you're still teasing me. Chuyu bit her lip as she glared at Chu Bei. Kill them all. Leave no one alive! As expected, the 3 masked men glanced at Chu Bei and Chen Nan. Their chilling voice drifted through the air. Immediately after, the 3 of them gathered their power at the same time. Sharp sword auras, bone-chilling ice spears, and long spears carrying wind blades rose against the wind. 3 different types of attacks mixed together. At the same time, they overflowed with light and carried a terrifying aura as they swept towards Zhuge Qingfeng, Chuyu, and Chu Bei. Huali Huali! Looking at the attacks coming from the opposite side that shook the void, Chu Bei calmly raised his right hand. A palm print formed by purple light shot out. The purple light palm print met the wind blades, ice spears, and long spears. There was no deafening explosion, nor was there a violent energy storm. Everything was silent. In front of the purple light palm print, the attacks of the 3 masked men were as if they were made of air. Before they even touched it, they disintegrated and dissipated. After destroying the fancy attacks, the purple light palm print continued to move forward. In an instant, it appeared in front of the 3 black-robed men. It was still silent. The air was slightly stagnant. The ground became silent. The pupils of the 3 black-robed men shrank. Fear appeared in their eyes. Before they could scream and dodge, they were turned into nothingness by the purple light palm print. Not even a speck of dust was left. If it were not for the remnants of the previous battle, One would even suspect that the three black-robed men had never appeared. Zhuge Qianfeng was stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. He did not care about his injuries and forgot to treat them. Chu Yu and the group of guards stared blankly at Chu Bei, and they were even more surprised to the point they were like half a piece of wood that was stuck there in a daze, not moving at all. After a while, Chu Bei tilted his head and looked at Zhuge Qianfeng. He pointed at Chu Bei and gulped. Master, what's his cultivation level? Level 5? I'm afraid it's above level 5. Zhuge Qianfeng shook his head and smiled. His current cultivation level was at level 4. Although he had not stepped into level 5, he could already see the strength of level 5. He was sure that there was no way that a tier 5 being would be able to kill 3 Grand Ascension stage beings with a casual wave of a hand. Could it be the legendary level 6? Chu Yu took a deep breath. A strange look appeared in her eyes. She was counting on Zhuge Qianfeng to avenge her. Now, it seemed that her idea was a joke. Looking at Chu Bei, who was walking towards her, Chu Yu's expression changed as she sensed the teasing smile on the other party's face. She was so frightened that she took a step back. Senior, what I said before was a joke. Please don't take it seriously, Chu Yu hurriedly said. Her attitude had changed completely. Now, she did not think that the person in front of her was just a young man with some strange tricks. She believed that a level 6 master could definitely rejuvenate. Maybe the person in front of her was already a 200-year-old monster. Sir, you are naughty. Please don't be calculative with her. Zhuge Qianfeng protected Chu Bei behind him and cupped his fists at Chu Bei. There was a pleading look in his eyes. If you insist on making you take responsibility for her previous offense, I'm willing to sacrifice myself. Then, Zhuge Qianfeng raised his right hand and smashed it between his eyebrows. Bang! Before the attack arrived, the aura gathered in Zhuge Qianfeng's palm was disintegrated by an invisible force. Living is a wonderful thing. Don't seek death so easily. Chu Bei smiled and looked at Chu Yu closely. He raised his eyebrows. I'm very interested in the castration you mentioned earlier. Hearing Chu Bei's words and recalling her arrogant words, Chu Yu's body trembled. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. Senior, I'm a girl. I don't have that. Then I can give you one. Chu Bei shrugged. Do you believe that I have that ability? Senior, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Meeting Chu Bei's mocking gaze, Chu Yu's face turned pale. Her legs gave way and she fell to the ground. Little girl, let me give you a word of advice. Trouble comes from careless talk. Chu Bei stopped threatening Chu Yu. He tidied his clothes. Let's go. I saved your lives. I can use this opportunity to pick a treasure from your palace. Sir, you want to follow us back to the palace? Zhuge Qianfeng was confused. Chu Bei nodded. The blazing fire immortal lotus is a gift. I want to ask for something. Chu Country, Imperial City. Outside the palace, the streets were crowded with people. It was very lively. Chu Country's Imperial City was divided into the inner palace and the outer palace. The outer palace was surrounded by a dark red wall and some male guards. Of course, there were also some ordinary and simple houses. The main task of these guards was to prevent anyone suspicious from getting close to the palace. After passing through the outer palace and passing through a 5-meter-tall golden wall, one would arrive at the inner palace. There were many magnificent palaces in the inner palace, indicating its core position in the imperial city. On the side of the high golden wall, teams of guards who had undergone strict training were patrolling back and forth. I didn't expect your return home to be so grand. Chu Bei glanced at the formation in front of him and couldn't help but glance at Chu Yu. Soldiers stood on both sides of the inner palace's gate. Their shiny armor stretched all the way to the end of the red carpet. At the end of the red carpet, a slender figure stood quietly on the steps. She was dressed in snow-white clothes. Under the light of the rising sun, her whole body seemed to be dyed with a layer of faint golden light. She looked like a fairy who had descended from the 9 heavens. As her clothes fluttered, she looked like she would fly away with the wind at any time. "Sister, I'm back!" Chu-yu shouted excitedly. Then, she sprinted toward Chu-yu and threw herself into the latter's arms. "Elder sister, I almost died outside. First there was the python, then there was the attack from the Baiwen nation. Fortunately, I was lucky enough to survive." Chu-yu hugged Chu-yu's waist and couldn't wait to act pitiful. Chu-yu knocked Chu-yu's forehead affectionately. "How dare you mention it? Do you know that father and mother were worried sick when you snuck out of the imperial city? Let's see how you explain it later. They love me so much. They won't punish me," Chu-yu said proudly. "Who are these two?" Chu-yu noticed Chu-bei and Chen-nan, who had come back together. She asked Chu-yu with a puzzled look in her eyes. "He was the one who saved my master and me from the Baiwen nation's powerhouses. As for coming to the imperial city, he was asking for something. As for what it was, I don't know." Chu-yu pointed at Chu-bei and told Chu-yu about her experience as they walked. "What? It could be a level 6. Chu-yu caught the key point. She raised her eyebrows and widened her eyes. She looked at Chu-bei with astonishment. "Sister, is father in his chamber right now?" Chu-yu asked. Chu-yu nodded. "Then bring these two to see father first." In the depths of the inner palace, in the emperor's chamber, in the magnificent hall with golden walls, there was a bright and cheerful dance song. Following the song, a few male and female servants in strange costumes began to dance. The emperor of Chu country, Chu Han, was currently lying on a large and comfortable soft chair covered with a golden-colored marten fur in the center of the main hall. He was concentrating all his attention on admiring the enchanting dance of the maids below the stage. From time to time, he would nod his head to express his appreciation for the dance below the stage. "Father, did you miss me?" Chu-yu ran into the hall. Her voice was so coy that it made one's hair stand on end. "I thought you died outside." Seeing that Chu-yu had returned safely, Chu Han was overjoyed at first. Then, as if he had thought of something, his face darkened. After a cold snort, Chu Han gestured with his hand. The dancing servants bowed and retreated. "This child left the palace without your permission. Wasn't it all for your birthday present?" Chu-yu hugged Chu Han from behind with a resentful expression, as if she had been wronged. "Where is the gift?" Chu Han's anger had not dissipated. "My gift was taken by Senior first." Chu-yu pouted and pointed at Chu-bei. "Senior?" Chu Han frowned. His gaze fell on Chu-bei. "Who are you?" "Who I am is not important," Chu-bei said calmly. "I came here to ask for something from your majesty." "You came here to ask for something so brazenly?" Hearing Chu-bei's words, Chu Han waved his dragon robe and his face became ugly. "Father, he is a 6th-level master. He was also the one who saved us." Seeing Chu Han get angry, Chu-yu hurriedly took a step forward and stood on her tiptoes to whisper into Chu Han's ear. Hearing this, Chu Han frowned and looked at Zhuge Qingfeng. Zhuge Qingfeng did not say anything and only nodded. He had already guessed what Chu-yu had said to Chu Han. "You are a 6th-level master and saved you. If I really have something you like, I am willing to give it to you and make a good relationship with you." Hearing Zhuge Qingfeng's reply, Chu Han's attitude improved. "What do you want?" "The thing in that box." Chu-bei pointed at a rectangular sandalwood box hanging on the wall by the bed. The box's position matched the red dot on the system map. Seeing what Chu-bei was pointing at, Chu Han's originally relaxed expression turned ugly once again. But before Chu Han could say anything, Chu-yu, who had been curious for a long time, rushed to the bed and took the sandalwood box. "Ho Yi's bow!" Once the box was opened, Chen-nan and Chu-yu's shocked shouts resounded in the hall. Looking at the bow with a black luster, Chen-nan's pupils contracted. He stared at it without blinking. His gaze was filled with a strange emotion, as if he had seen a long-lost friend. Ho Yi's bow! He did not expect that after dying for 10,000 years, the first thing he saw after his resurrection would be the divine bow that shook the immortal fantasy continent. The Ho Yi's bow had changed owners countless times. The last owner before his death was his father, Qinzhan. Back then, Qinzhan relied on this bow to kill 3 peerless masters who surrounded him in a single day. From then on, he became famous and shook the entire immortal fantasy continent. Old friend, I did not expect to meet you again after 10,000 years. Chen Nan's lips trembled. Chen Nan's lips trembled as he softly muttered. Then, he raised his eyes to look at Chu Bei. Master, is this what you came here for? Chu Bei glanced at Chen Nan and nodded in response. Chu Yu, who was holding the box, was shocked. She did not expect that the thing the other party wanted was the Ho Yi's bow. This was the most precious treasure of Chu. How could they give it to someone else? Chapter 356. Are you really here for the Ho Yi bow? Inside the palace, Chu Han suppressed the anger in his heart. If it weren't for the strength of the person in front of him, he would have already given the order to kill this arrogant person. After knowing that Chu Bei was asking for the Ho Yi bow, Zhuge Chengfeng also had a trace of seriousness between his brows. To be precise, I'm not asking for it, but taking it back. Chu Bei looked straight at Chu Han and pointed at Chen Nan. The Ho Yi bow has an owner. You must be joking, right? Chu Han was burning with anger. 1,000 years ago, the Ho Yi bow was the national treasure of Chu. How could it have an owner? Then can you draw the Ho Yi bow? Chu Bei's lips curled into a playful smile. The Ho Yi bow is an immortal treasure and can only be used once a year. Half a year ago, I drew it once. Naturally, I can't draw it again now. Chu Han narrowed his eyes and stared at Chu Bei. You should know about this, right? Chu Bei didn't reply. Instead, he smiled and glanced at Chen Nan. Show them what you're capable of. All right. Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Chen Nan nodded and reached into the sandalwood box. The instant Chen Nan held the Ho Yi bow with both hands, a warm current flowed from the back of the bow to his palms. In the next moment, the black Ho Yi bow began to emit a faint golden light and the bowstring trembled slightly. Even after 10,000 years, this feeling still hasn't changed. It's as if everything happened yesterday. Every time I hold it, it will hum happily and emit bursts of golden light. After muttering to himself, Chen Nan walked out of the hall. After scanning the surroundings, his gaze fixed on a newly built building. Emperor Chu, is there anyone in that tower? It was just completed 3 days ago. No one has moved in yet. Chu Han's eyes were filled with confusion. Why are you asking this? I want to test if its power is still there. As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Nan took a step forward and squatted slightly. His left hand held the bow while his right hand emitted a golden light. An arrow formed from interweaving flashes of light was formed. In front of the main hall, Chen Nan's expression was extremely focused. It was as if all he could see was the 7-story tower 100 meters away. As the bowstring slowly tightened, the pitch-black Ho Yi bow began to glow with a faint golden light. In an instant, boundless qi of heaven and earth surged towards the bow. Chen Nan's body also emitted a dazzling golden light, which was extremely dazzling. At that moment, Chen Nan and the Ho Yi bow seemed to have fused together. A powerful ripple of energy radiated out from him. How is that possible? The Ho Yi bow can only be used once a year, and I've already used it once before. Why is he able to draw it again? Sensing the powerful and familiar energy fluctuation in the air, Chu Han couldn't help but take a step back, his eyes filled with confusion and surprise. Chu Yu's eyes widened as she muttered, So he's not simple either. Chu Yu was incomparably shocked. Previously, she only knew that Chu Bei's methods were strange, that he was an old monster who had regained his youth, and that he was even a legendary 6th-order expert. Previously, she had thought that Chen Nan was just a small follower, and that his qi was only at the early 2nd order, which was roughly the same as hers. However, Chen Nan, who had drawn the Ho Yi bow, was like a mountain. His powerful aura was like that of a demon god descending to the world, giving people the urge to worship him. The moment Chen Nan pulled the bowstring to its tightest, the wind and clouds surged, and thunder rumbled. Swoosh! Strong winds blew, and thunder rumbled. The golden arrow shot out like lightning. Boom! With a deafening sound, the 30-meter-tall 7-story tower 100 meters away was instantly shattered, and rubble flew everywhere. Looking at the 7-story tower that had turned into ruins, Chu Han and Zhuge Qingfeng's expressions changed. Their faces were filled with disbelief. So powerful. Witnessing this scene, Chu Yu swallowed her saliva, dumbfounded. The air slowly calmed down, and the dazzling golden light on Chen Nan's body gradually dimmed until it disappeared. However, the powerful aura on his body was still there, and his figure still gave people the feeling of a mountain. Is this the surprise that the light talent gave me? Chen Nan put away the Hou-Yi Bao with joy on his face. 10,000 years ago, not to mention the arrow just now, even 1/10 of its power was enough to make him collapse. However, after consuming the pill of light, he didn't feel any exhaustion. He had the confidence that as long as he wanted, not to mention 1 arrow, he could shoot 10 or 100 more arrows. Now do you believe that the Hou-Yi Bao has an owner? Chu Bei put his hands behind his back and looked at Chu Han playfully. Chu Han was silent, and his face was a little ugly. Tomorrow is your 60th birthday, and I brought you a congratulatory gift. Chu Bei took out the blazing immortal lotus and handed it to Chu Han, then pointed at the Hou-Yi Bao in Chen Nan's hand. As for the Hou-Yi Bao, I'm taking it back. Chu Han was silent for a moment, then he took a deep breath and pointed at Chen Nan. Since this young friend can draw the Hou-Yi Bao a second time, even if he wasn't the previous owner of the Hou-Yi Bao, he has now gained his recognition. I'm willing to fulfill your wish and return the Hou-Yi Bao to you. After speaking, Chu Han looked at Chu Bei and said, However, I have a presumptuous request. According to our spies, on my birthday tomorrow, the Heavenly Wind Nation's delegation will challenge the younger generation of my Chu Nation. The challenger's cultivation has already reached the 3rd stage of the Great Ascension Realm, and he's also a Dragon Knight. Among the younger generation of my Chu Nation, there are few who can match him. I hope that the 2 of you can stay for a while, especially the owner of the Hou-Yi Bao. He can represent my Chu Nation's younger generation to face the enemy tomorrow. Sure. Chu Bei nodded. It's getting late, so let me have a good tour of the Chu Nation's imperial palace. You accompany the 2 guests. Chu Han instructed Chu Yu. Father, you're really giving the Hou-Yi Bao to them. After Chu Bei and the others left, Chu Yu looked at Chu Han with displeasure. That's my Chu Nation's heirloom. In the situation just now, would they return the Hou-Yi Bao if I didn't give it to them? Chu Han's face was gloomy. Even if that old monster isn't a 6th-stage expert, he's at least a 5th-stage Great Ascension Realm expert. Zhuge Qingfeng and I are no match for him. Giving them the Hou-Yi Bao is just a delaying tactic. The reason why I'm keeping them until tomorrow is to take back the Hou-Yi Bao. After speaking, Chu Han's eyes flashed with shrewdness. Quickly ask Ancestor Xian to come out of seclusion. Father is so considerate. Understanding Chu Han's intention, Chu Yu nodded. Chu Bei didn't know Chu Han's thoughts, but of course, even if he knew, he would still stay. After all, in the face of strength, all schemes and tricks are superfluous. The next day, Chu Han's 60th birthday was held in the main hall of the inner palace. All the civil and military officials came to congratulate him, and rare treasures were piled up as gifts. The most eye-catching thing was naturally the blazing fire immortal lotus that Chu Bei gave the day before. It was placed in a conspicuous position, and its fragrance refreshed the mind. Dear officials, let's eat, drink, and have fun today. At the head of the table, Chu Han began to order the banquet after receiving the congratulatory gifts and praises from the officials. In less than 15 minutes, the main hall was filled with singing and dancing. Melodious music and woodwind instruments were played, and the fragrance of wine assailed the nostrils. The officials took their seats in an orderly manner, and the positions of different officials were different from Chu Han. After taking their seats, the officials couldn't help but cast their gazes on the luxurious sandalwood chair next to Chu Han's dragon throne. A young man in a long robe greeted Chu Han before slowly taking his seat. Behind the young man in the long robe stood a young man in a black robe. The young man in the black robe carried a black longbow on his back. Do you know who is sitting next to His Majesty? I've never seen him before. But since he can sit on the same level as His Majesty, his identity must be extraordinary. Even if the successors of those ancient sacred grounds came, they wouldn't have such qualifications, right? After all, our Chu kingdom is one of the 3 great empires. I saw him yesterday. He was even brought around the palace by Princess Chuyu. Princess Chuyu was very respectful to this person. Just as the officials were sizing up Chu Bei and guessing his identity, Chu Han stood up from the dragon throne and raised the wine cup in his hand. Dear officials, I'm sure you're very curious about the identity of this distinguished guest next to me. Yesterday, he saved you from danger twice, and his cultivation is unfathomable. He has already stepped into the legendary stage 6. After saying a few simple words, Chu Han looked at Chu Bei. Fellow Taoist, I'll toast you with this first cup of wine. After saying that, Chu Han drank the wine in his cup in a forthright manner. Chu Bei immediately raised his wine cup to return the toast. What? Stage 6 expert. Hearing that, the officials looked at Chu Bei again with a hint of surprise and respect in their eyes. They had the same thought in their hearts. An old monster who had lived for more than 100 years and regained his youth. Next, the main hall was filled with singing and dancing. Music lingered in the air, and the officials drank and chatted merrily. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, Your Majesty, the founding emperor of the Chu kingdom, established the country with martial arts. On your birthday, it's too monotonous to only have singing and dancing. In recent years, our country has cultivated 3 pretty good juniors. Why don't we let them present a martial arts performance for you? At this time, a middle-aged man dressed in foreign clothes stood up and bowed towards Chu Han. The originally peaceful atmosphere in the hall was also broken by his words. Envoy of the Windy Nation, you're really impressive. How can a subordinate nation like you show off martial arts in our Chu kingdom's imperial banquet? That's right. And don't think we don't know what you're thinking. Don't you just want to take the opportunity to show off? Our Chu kingdom has many talents. Even if we want to show off martial arts, it should be our Chu kingdom's outstanding generation. Who do you think you are? The officials' faces were gloomy as they angrily rebuked one after another. Dear officials, please calm down. Chu Han waved his hand, indicating for the officials to remain silent. Then, he looked at the envoy of the Windy Nation. I also want to see how outstanding the 3 outstanding youths you've cultivated in recent years are. As his voice fell, Chu Han made a gesture. The singers, dancers, and musicians all retreated. After a long while, 3 people walked in from outside the hall. They were all in their 20s. Each of them was incomparably tall, and the muscles on their bodies were like dragons, full of explosive power. Chapter 357. Your Majesty Emperor Chu, it's a bit boring with just the 3 of us. Why don't you let us have a spar with the younger generation of Great Chu? Not only will it be lively, but it can also increase the friendship between the 2 countries. One of them bowed respectfully to Chu Han. You guys are openly challenging and want to compete with the heroes of Great Chu. Chu Han clapped his hands and laughed. But since you guys issued an invitation, how can I, the dignified Great Chu, not accept the challenge? Approved. Your Majesty Emperor Chu, the 3 of us are Dragon Knights. Because we have been cultivating together since young, only the 3 of us can unleash our strongest combat power when fighting together. Before coming, the 3 of us challenged a Tier 4 initial ascension stage in the country and won. One of them stepped forward and looked at Chu Han. In order to let your Majesty watch to your heart's content, you can choose the 9 most outstanding youths of Great Chu to fight with us. If you are worried that 9 people are not enough, the number can be added. What? They can actually beat a Tier 4 expert. 3 against 9? Isn't this looking down on the younger generation of our Great Chu too much? Young people present, who is willing to fight with him? The ministers were filled with righteous indignation. The younger generation of extraordinary warrior mansion gathered together and discussed in low voices. There was some seriousness between their brows. The younger generation here naturally referred to those under the age of 25. The highest cultivation among them was only middle stage Tier 3. But the other 3 defeated a Tier 4 expert not long ago. Even if the 9 of them were middle stage Tier 3, the result of the battle would not be too good. After some discussion, 9 people finally took a deep breath and knelt in front of Chu Han. Emperor Chu, the 9 of us are willing to fight. Ridiculous! A challenge from a mere subordinate country. How can my dignified great Chu bully with numbers? Chu Han shouted and then looked at the 3 people of Heavenly Wind Nation and raised a finger. 1 person! My great Chu will only send 1 person to fight the 3 of you. Hearing Chu Han's words, the 9 youths of extraordinary warrior mansion's faces changed drastically. They were not confident if they fought together. Now that only 1 person went up, this was the outcome of a sure loss. Your Majesty Emperor Chu, this old minister has something to say. An old man of extraordinary warrior mansion seemed to see the difficulties of the 9 youths. But before he could speak, he was interrupted by Chu Han. There's no need for the 9 of you to go up. I already have a candidate in mind. Chu Han glanced at the 3 dragon knights from the Windy Nation and said with a smile, Like I said, 1 person is enough. Emperor Chu, aren't you looking down on the 3 of us too much? The dragon knight leaped onto the back of the dragon, holding a dragon-patterned spear in his hand. He was very conceited. Is this what it means to fly? How mighty! I don't know what His Majesty is thinking. I only hope that this young man has some skill. Some of the ministers looked at the flying dragons in the sky with envy. Some of them were worried for Chen Nan. Master, should we kill them? Chen Nan looked at Chu Bei, asking for his opinion. Chu Bei smiled. Chu Nation has protected the Hou Yi Bao for over 1,000 years. Chu Han definitely won't let these 3 leave alive. Moreover, they won't show mercy to you. I know what to do. After hearing Chu Bei's words, Chen Nan's eyes flashed with coldness. Then, he leaped onto the arena. Can the competition start? Chen Nan looked at the 3 dragon knights expressionlessly. Are you in such a hurry to meet the King of Hell? As the mocking words fell, the 3 dragon knights stepped on their flying dragons and slowly approached Chen Nan. A tyrannical aura spread out from the 3 of them, causing the spectating ministers to feel a heavy pressure. Suddenly, the arena quieted down. Everyone's eyes locked onto Chen Nan, their eyes filled with worry. Chen Nan glanced indifferently at the 3 dragon knights above him. He didn't say anything and just took out the Hou Yi Bao from his back at a moderate pace. Holding the bao in his left hand, he placed his right hand on the bowstring. Specks of golden light appeared. In the blink of an eye, 3 golden arrows were formed. That's His Majesty's Hou Yi Bao. How could it be in his hands? And as far as I know, the Hou Yi Bao can only be used once a year. His Majesty used it once half a year ago. It's impossible for him to pull it open. Strange. What's with that arrow? It seems to have evolved from his right hand. What kind of technique is this? Most of the spectating ministers recognized the Hou Yi Bao. Seeing Chen Nan slowly pull the bowstring, they were all shocked. Not good. That bao is strange. Sensing the yuan qi of heaven and earth crazily surging toward the Hou Yi Bao in Chen Nan's hands, the 3 dragon knights' expressions changed. Gradually, the vast energy on the arena began to violently fluctuate. Chen Nan and the Hou Yi Bao emitted 100 zhang of light. An incomparably tyrannical aura surged from the former. At this moment, Chen Nan's aura underwent an earth-shattering change. He was like an indomitable giant, making people feel an urge to kneel down and worship him. The wyverns beneath the dragon knights seemed to sense the dangerous aura. Their huge bodies began to tremble, and they kept growling. Kill! The 3 dragon knights looked at each other, then urged their wyverns to dive down. The 3 of them brandished their spears and pointed them at Chen Nan. Wind blades whistled. Although the three dragon knights no longer underestimated their opponent, and even took the initiative to launch fierce attacks, it was already too late. Chen Nan had already released the bowstring. 3 golden bolts of lightning pierced through the air. In an instant, the arena was filled with fierce winds and rumbling thunder. This strange phenomenon shocked the spectating officials, causing them to retreat, afraid of being affected. In the blink of an eye, the 3 golden bolts of lightning met the 3 wyverns. Rumble! Amidst the deafening explosion, fireworks bloomed in the sky above the arena. Then, amidst miserable and painful roars, a rain of blood fell from the sky. The 3 wyverns and the 3 dragon knights fell like kites with their strings cut. They landed on the arena, causing the ground to shake. He won? It ended just like that? The spectating officials could hardly believe their eyes. If it weren't for the 6 dead bodies on the arena, they would have thought that they were dreaming. After a long while, the officials still hadn't recovered from their shock. This battle had caught them off guard. To be precise, they had just prepared to watch the battle between the dragon knights when it ended. Moreover, the winner was a second-stage cultivator that they didn't think highly of. Very good! Chu Han stood up and clapped. There wasn't much shock on his face. He had already seen the power of Chen Nan's arrow, although he didn't know where the golden arrow came from. Impossible! Impossible! Looking at the corpses on the arena, the Heavenly Wind Empire's envoy collapsed to the ground as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out. As expected of the great Chu's Hoi Bao, it actually allowed a second-stage cultivator to kill 3 third-stage Grand Ascension stage dragon knights. Just as everyone was still immersed in the 3 golden arrows, a vigorous voice came from the east, vigorous and forceful. Hearing the voice from the distance, Chu Han's brows suddenly relaxed, and the stone in his heart seemed to have been put down. As expected, he didn't really give us the Hoi Bao. Sensing the aura in the distance, Chu Bei's lips curled into a faint smile. Everything was as he expected. The great Chu Emperor gave them the Hoi Bao to buy time. Imperial Father, Ancestor Xian has caught up. Chu Yu and Chu Yu smiled at each other. The Hoi Bao was the great Chu Emperor's treasure. In addition, they had seen the power of the Hoi Bao with their own eyes. It was even more impossible for them to let these 2 people who appeared out of nowhere take it away. All the officials looked in the direction of the voice and saw a rainbow streak across the east. Then, a hunched figure appeared in the sky above the arena from 100 meters away. Chapter 358. This energy fluctuation must be from a Stage 6 powerhouse. Another Stage 6 powerhouse. Didn't Emperor Chu say that the guest next to him was also a Stage 6 powerhouse? I've lived for decades and have never seen a Stage 6 powerhouse before, but I've seen 2 today. Don't you think this old man looks familiar? The officials of the Cultural Relics Department looked at the old man who had flown to the sky above the arena from afar and discussed animatedly. Han greets Ancestor Xian. Congratulations on reaching Stage 6. Chu Han stepped forward and bowed deeply to the old man. Other than respect, there was also joy on his face. Before he went into seclusion, Ancestor Xian's eyes were cloudy and lifeless, and his wrinkled skin was like a crumpled paper ball. But now, he was full of energy, and his bald head had sparse black hair again. When he noticed that the officials below did not move, Chu Han immediately turned and shouted, "Why aren't you saluting Ancestor Xian?" Hearing that, the officials were stunned at first, but when they came back to their senses, they all knelt and bowed to the old man. "Honor, you don't have to be so formal. I'm just an old man now, and I don't care about the court anymore. If I didn't hear from you or that someone coveted my Chu immortal treasure, the Hoi Bao, I wouldn't have come out of seclusion." Chu Ao did not seem to care about his image. He twisted his neck and looked at Chen Nan. "I didn't expect you to break the taboo of the Hoi Bao and draw it again and again. It's really shocking. I'm the owner of the Hoi Bao. Of course, I can draw it at any time." Chen Nan looked at Chu Ao cautiously. He could feel the terrifying energy hidden in the other party's body. "I just came out of seclusion, and my hands are itching." Chu Ao narrowed his eyes. Little guy, if you can defeat me, I'll give you the Hoi Bao. Chen Nan frowned and hesitated for a moment. He raised the Hoi Bao again, and spots of golden light appeared from his right palm to form an arrow. As Chen Nan's aura rose, the black Hoi Bao burst out with a dazzling golden light. The bowstring was slowly drawn, and the golden arrow shot toward the old man. Wherever it passed, it left a golden rainbow in the void. Clang! The sound of metal clashing resounded in the sky. The power of this bow in your hands is indeed extraordinary. Chu Ao's eyes shone with a golden light as he stared fervently at the Hoi Bao in Chen Nan's hands. Before I went into seclusion, I'm afraid that even I would have suffered serious injuries from this arrow. Ancestor Xian, he actually took it with his bare hands. This arrow was even more powerful than the arrow that was used to deal with the 3 dragon knights. But not only did Ancestor Xian receive it, he was also unharmed. This is the strength of a Type 6 divine warrior? Even the immortal treasure, Hoi Bao, can't do anything to him. A group of civil and military officials looked at Chu Ao with admiration, praising him endlessly. Chu Han let out a long sigh of relief. Just now, when he saw Chu Ao catching the arrow with his bare hands, he was worried that he would be injured by the arrow. Fortunately, everything was fine. Chen Nan's face turned serious. That arrow from before was already the strongest arrow he could shoot. But even so, he was still unable to injure the other party. Just as Chen Nan pulled the bowstring again, Chu Ao clenched his right hand, and the arrow in his palm turned into specks of light and dissipated into the air. Little guy, this Hoi Bao should be returned to the Chu dynasty's royal family. As his slightly hoarse voice sounded, Chu Ao waved his right hand, stirring up waves of strong wind. In the next moment, light surged and evolved into a huge golden palm. With a rumbling sound, the golden palm swept toward Chen Nan. Chen Nan's pupils constricted, and he hurriedly shot an arrow. Crack! The golden palm crushed the arrow and continued forward, crashing into Chen Nan's body with a loud bang. Then, the golden palm rose and wrapped around the Hoi Bao in Chen Nan's hand. Under the powerful force, Chen Nan's figure flew back nearly 10 meters like a cannonball, stumbling for a while before stabilizing his body. Father, the Hoi Bao is back. Looking at the Hoi Bao in Chu Ao's hand, Chu Yu and Chu Yu's faces were filled with excitement. Sigh, why can't I pull it open? With the Hoi Bao in hand, Chu Ao couldn't help but sigh after a few fruitless attempts. After sighing, Chu Ao's line of sight returned to Chen Nan, and he said indifferently, Little guy, although every arrow you shoot with the Hoi Bao has the power to injure a 5th stage expert, it has no effect in front of me. If you are willing to stay in the House of Prodigy and serve the Chu dynasty, I can temporarily let you keep the Hoi Bao. Chen Nan bit his lips and didn't reply, but cast his gaze toward Chu Bei, who was sitting on a chair in the stands. Master, please make a move. Chen Nan asked Chu Bei for help. Although he possessed the talent of light, due to his Tier 2 strength and the fact that he hadn't fully developed his talent of light, and without the Hoi Bao, his overall strength was at most comparable to a Tier 4 expert. He was far from being a match for the old man before him. Have you forgotten your ability? Even if you can't beat him, you can elementalize and be in an invincible position. After his indifferent voice sounded, Chu Bei took a step and appeared beside Chen Nan in a flash. Chen Nan scratched his head awkwardly. My mind was on the Hoi Bao just now, so I didn't react. Is this esteemed guest going to stand up for that little guy? He can't be going to fight Ancestor Xian, right? If that's really the case, then aren't we going to see a peerless battle between 2 6th stage experts? We're so close, won't we be affected by the terrifying shockwaves of the battle? The gazes of the civil and military officials switched back and forth between Chu Bei and Chu Ao, and while their faces were filled with excitement, they all retreated one after another. Looking at the two people facing each other in the air, Chu Han took a deep breath. The Hoi Bao's true owner depended on the outcome of the battle between these two. I heard you say that you're also at the 6th stage? Looking at Chu Bei, who was also standing in the void, Chu Ao asked tentatively with a puzzled look on his face. The other party being able to hover in the air was indeed the mark of a sixth-stage expert. However, he couldn't feel the fluctuation of energy from the other party. Yes or no, you'll have your answer in a moment. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Chu Ao mockingly. Bullying a junior is nothing. Since you're itching, why don't the two of us spar? That's exactly what I was thinking. Let me see what kind of strength the person who can cultivate such a powerful little guy has. As his voice fell, Chu Ao's black hair rose up, and the red light around his body was like a raging fire, as if he was wearing a layer of exquisite armor. Chu Ao stepped into the air, and an unparalleled aura spread out with him as the center, causing the civil and military officials around him to be unable to breathe. After a while, Chu Ao's aura climbed to the peak. Then, with a wave of his sleeve, a broad blade appeared in his hand. With a wave of the blade, a blazing blade light swept downwards. The bright brilliance surged with a huge energy fluctuation, bringing with it a fierce wind that hit the battle arena. Whoosh! In the strange whistling of the blade light, the huge battle arena was split in half, and a deep gully was shocking. The blade of a Stage 6 powerhouse is so terrifying. The civil and military officials in the arena sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu Ao's casual warm-up attack actually caused such a terrifying force. Looking at Chu Bei, who was calm and relaxed, Chu Ao frowned and reminded him. This is my first same-level battle after entering Stage 6. I will treat it seriously, and I hope you won't be careless. Chu Bei indifferently glanced at Chu Ao, whose face was full of fighting spirit, and did not respond. He only raised his hand and waved at the latter. His indifferent attitude made it seem as if he did not take this battle between two peerless experts to heart. Arrogant. Chu Ao snorted and changed from holding the blade with one hand to holding it with both hands. Suddenly, the vitality released by his body intertwined with the blade light, and there was a burst of cracking sound. Under everyone's gaze, Chu Ao began to become illusory, and the blade light became bigger and bigger. In a few breaths, the blade light, which was originally 100 feet long, became 100 feet long. And Chu Ao also disappeared, as if he had completely integrated into the broad blade. At this moment, Chu Ao was the blade, and the blade was Chu Ao. The realm of one with the blade. Ancestor Xian's momentum is already so terrifying. Why is that person still so calm? Why hasn't this distinguished guest condensed his momentum? Does he think that he is a veteran Stage 6 powerhouse and can easily defeat Ancestor Xian, who just broke through Stage 6? From the beginning to the end, I didn't notice the vitality fluctuation on his body. Maybe he is already ready to admit defeat. Looking at Ancestor Xian's posture, the outcome of this battle is very likely to be decided in one move. The civil and military officials held their breaths, and their eyes locked on the blade light that was gradually stabilizing. Chu Han and Chu Yu also tensed up, and from time to time, they looked at Chu Bei with puzzlement in their eyes. At this time, the other party still had not made the slightest move. The only one who was calm was Chu Nan. Although he did not know much about the master who gave him the inheritance, he was very sure that the other party was more than enough to deal with the so-called Stage 6 powerhouse. Rumble! With a buzzing sound, the blade light shot toward Chu Bei. The dazzling blade light was like a shocking rainbow that streaked across the sky like lightning, and a vast energy fluctuation surged. Although the blade light moved at a speed visible to the naked eye, it seemed to freeze the void where the blade pointed. If the opponent wanted to escape, it would arrive in the blink of an eye. Coincidentally, Chu Bei had no intention of dodging. He still did not make any big movements, and he only raised his right hand slowly. When the blade light arrived, his right hand clenched into a fist and met it. Under everyone's gaze, the scene in the air was even somewhat laughable. Chu Bei was like an ant in front of the 300-meter-long saber light, let alone his fist. Chu Bei's seemingly light punch was like a grain of sand trying to shake a mountain. However, it was this seemingly laughable punch that had forcefully stopped the 300-meter-long saber light with its imposing aura. Rumble! In the air, a black light suddenly appeared on the surface of Chu Bei's fist and spread along the blade light. Then, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The huge energy fluctuation was like a raging sea, vast and mighty, in the entire inner palace. The terrifying energy fluctuation tore through the void, and some officials with low cultivation immediately lost their balance and fell to the ground. At this moment, the blade light seemed to have met a force that was 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times stronger than it was, and it shattered with a loud bang. Crack! The blade light dissipated, and a black shadow fell diagonally to the ground like a kite with a broken string, creating a deep crater with a buzzing sound. A wide blade that had been broken in half was stuck at the edge of the crater. How is this possible? Ancestor Xian has lost. Is he really at rank 6? Is there such a big gap between rank 6 and rank 6? Do you think there is a higher realm above rank 6? The civil and military officials were in a daze, and they stared at Chu Bei in the air with their mouths agape. From time to time, they would glance at the deep crater on the ground. The shocking scene just now had made them a little dazed. The most powerful blow that Ancestor Chueo condensed, which could destroy heaven and earth, had collapsed under the opponent's light punch. The blade was broken, and the person himself was even more unsure of whether he was dead or alive. Ancestor Xian! Chu Han, Chu Yu, and the others' faces changed greatly, and they quickly ran to the deep crater. At this time, they could no longer care about the Hou Yi Bao. What they were most afraid of was that the only rank 6 master of Chu had died under the punch just now. Fortunately, the result that they were most worried about did not happen. In the deep crater, a figure flew out shakily. At this moment, Chueo's face was pale, his hands were naturally hanging down, and his breath was weak to the extreme. His black hair was messy, and his whole body was covered with dust, like an old man past his prime. Chueo coughed again and again, glancing at the broken blade, and a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Finally, his eyes fixed on Chu Bei, and he said, "You are not at rank 6 at all." Although he had just stepped into the realm of rank 6, the previous blade was his strongest blow, and even at the moment of the blow, he had an epiphany, and the power had doubled. In other words, even a rank 6 master of the Great Ascension stage would have to deal with it with all his strength. On the other hand, the other party not only easily disintegrated his attack with a punch, but also seriously injured him. He understood that the other party deliberately controlled the strength of the punch, and only seriously injured him to a state where he could not fight back, and did not kill him. Otherwise, the one lying in the deep crater would be a cold corpse. When did I say that I was rank 6? Chu Bei looked at Chueo playfully with his hands behind his back, and with a wave of his right hand, he took back the Hou Yi Bao from Chueo. Chen Nan on the side, although he had already guessed the result, his face could not help but show a look of shock. From the beginning, he was sure that Chu Bei could defeat Chueo, but he did not expect that he could win so easily. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Chueo's face was ugly to the extreme, and he turned to look at Chu Yu. Chu Yu shrank his neck and pointed at Chu Han. Chu Han's mouth showed a helpless smile, and then he glared fiercely at Zhuge Qinfeng in the crowd. Zhuge Qinfeng coughed and avoided Chu Han's murderous gaze. Thinking back, along the way, this person had easily scared away the rank 4 volcanic giant python, and then killed 3 rank 4 masters of the Baiwen nation with a raise of his hand, but he had never clearly stated his strength. Rank 6, this was their guess from the beginning to the end. Chapter 359. So this seat of honor is not at rank 6? Is there a realm above rank 6? I've never heard of it. That's right. There are no records of such experts in the ancient books. The deities that we worship should be at least at the 6th step of cultivation. Are there really gods in this world? I thought they were all made up. If there are, where are they? Why haven't they appeared before? The civil and military officials looked at each other. Is your body still itchy? Do you want another punch? Chu Bei paced around and smiled at Chu Ao. I like to spar, but I don't like to be abused. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Chu Ao shook his head. If he had known from the beginning that the person in front of him had broken through rank 6, there would not have been a fight. Then can we take this Hoi Bao away? Chu Bei pointed at the bao in Chen Nan's hand. Chu Ao took a deep breath and said helplessly, 1,000 times higher cultivation, I don't have the strength to snatch it away. Rather than that, it's better to give it away and form good karma. But before Senior leaves, I hope you can tell me what's the realm above rank 6? Rank 6 is also known as the real martial realm, and above that is the immortal martial realm. Chu Bei fiddled with his fingers and said casually, when you go one step further and cultivate to the immortal martial realm, you will be taken to a place called the Heaven Realm. There are countless immortal martial realm experts. Above the immortal martial realm is the Divine King Realm and the Divine Emperor Realm. Heaven Realm? There is such a place. No wonder there are no experts above rank 6 on this continent. Chu Ao looked enlightened. After he came back to his senses, he asked tentatively, then I wonder what realm Senior is in now? Immortal Martial Realm? Or the Divine King Realm above the Immortal Martial Realm? Chu Bei tilted his head 45 degrees and looked into the distance. Above the Divine Emperor Realm, there are higher realms. Maybe when you step into the Heaven Realm, you can find out about my realm from others. At this point, Chu Bei's gaze landed on Chu Han. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and said with a mocking expression, Your Majesty, we are very grateful for your hospitality. But in the end, you still made a fool out of me. This, I hope you can understand. After all, the immortal treasure, Hoi Bao, is the imperial treasure of Dar Chu, and I can't allow it to be lost in my hands. After saying that, Chu Han seemed to have been freed. Now it's all good. The Hoi Bao was lost in Ancestor Xian's hands. It has nothing to do with me. Chu Bei smiled and patted Chen Nan's shoulder. Now that we have the Hoi Bao, it's time for us to leave. However, just as Chen Nan was about to take a step forward to retrieve the Hoi Bao from Chu Bei, it mysteriously disappeared. Master, you... Chen Nan was stunned. He thought that the other party would hand over the Hoi Bao to him. Host has obtained Hoi Bao. Level 14 Commodity Authority Activation Progress, 30%, Mission 3, Host Science Dawn. As Chu Bei listened to the system's voice, he patted Chen Nan's shoulder and said earnestly, My disciple, I will temporarily keep your Hoi Bao for you. I don't want you to rely on other things too early on your path of cultivation. Yes, your disciple understands. After hearing Chu Bei's words, Chen Nan was silent for a while and nodded heavily. Don't you want to see Yusin? Before that, I will take you to a place. After saying those words calmly, Chu Bei disappeared from the palace square with Chen Nan. Tens of thousands of years passed in the blink of an eye. Even if the continent shifted, the rivers changed, and the scenery changed beyond recognition, the majestic Kunlun mountain range was still there. Master, so you brought me here! Chen Nan recognized the Kunlun mountain range. This was the place where Yusin was buried tens of thousands of years ago. As expected of the immortal mountain. Looking at the scenery below, Chu Bei couldn't help but sigh. The Kunlun mountain range had an average elevation of tens of thousands of meters above sea level. The difference in elevation between the peaks and valleys was too great, causing the same region to have a different climate. The peaks and valleys below 3,000 meters above sea level had deep forests and beautiful scenery. The trees on the mountains were green, and the flowers in the valleys were beautiful. Many places were like spring all year round. The peaks above 5,000 to 6,000 meters above sea level were covered in snow all year round. Among the rolling mountains, snowy peaks stood out. On the snowy mountains that didn't melt all year round, there were extremely precious snow lotuses. They were the treasures of the snowy mountains. The vast Kunlun mountain range had a majestic aura. It was covered in silver and green. Looking from afar, the Kunlun mountain range was verdant and full of spring. Above the mountainside, it was covered in snow. It was a vast expanse of white. Even after the ravages of time, the Kunlun mountain range still maintained its magnificent and magical scenery. After entering the Kunlun mountain range, Chu Bei and Chen Nan slowed down their flying speed and flew close to the forest. There were exotic flowers and herbs in the mountains, and their fragrance assailed their nostrils. All kinds of rare birds and beasts jumped around in the mountains. It was a paradise. Master, that's the sky-piercing peak. After flying past numerous peaks and valleys, Chen Nan stopped in front of a mountain that was about 7,000 meters above sea level. You have a deep impression of this place in your memory, right? Looking at the excited Chen Nan, Chu Bei couldn't help but shake his head. The sky-piercing peak was like a sharp sword piercing through the clouds. The mountain was covered in silver, and it was a world of ice and snow. Clouds and mist swirled around the mountain peak like celestial chi. Standing in the middle of it, one would feel as if they had ascended to a paradise. Master, will I really be able to see Yusin again? Chen Nan became nervous as he looked at Chu Bei nervously. 10,000 years ago, he saw Yusin die under the hands of the Demon King to save him. Although his master had told him many times that Yusin was still alive, he was still a little scared. He was scared that the latter was playing a joke on him. Let's go down, Chu Bei said faintly, and then he dove down. Below the sky-piercing peak was the ancient immortal ruins, the 100-Flower Valley. Yusin. Arriving at the entrance of the 100-Flower Valley, Chen Nan murmured softly with a choked voice. I already said that she's not dead. Can you be more normal? Ever since arriving at the Kunlun Mountains, Chu Bei had been listening to Chen Nan's nagging behind him. Looking at Chen Nan's emotional reminiscence, he felt a little disgusted. However, the scenery of the 100-Flower Valley was really mesmerizing. A rich fragrance assailed his nostrils. Looking from afar, the valley was filled with colorful purple and red flowers. A small stream slowly flowed out of the valley. The water was clear, and the bottom of the stream was filled with colorful pebbles. Fish swam around happily, creating a harmonious and lively scene. I've embarrassed myself in front of Master. Chen Nan took a deep breath. After his expression returned to normal, he walked towards the entrance of the valley. Chu Bei didn't follow him immediately. Instead, he looked at Chen Nan's back with a smile, as if waiting for something interesting to happen. Bang! Just as Chu Bei was about to take half a step into the valley, a shocking turn of events occurred. A huge shockwave struck Chen Nan out of nowhere. Chen Nan, who was completely unprepared, was instantly sent flying. He stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, this force that suddenly appeared seemed to be only to stop the intruder. It only sent Chen Nan flying and didn't cause any substantial damage to him. What's going on? Chen Nan frowned slightly and walked towards the valley again. The result was the same. That mysterious force sent him flying again. Who's causing trouble? Chen Nan roared. A thin and long flash of light shot out from his palm and slammed towards the entrance of the valley. With a whoosh, the flash of light produced a dazzling ripple at the entrance of the valley before disappearing without a trace. Chen Nan didn't seem to believe it. His entire body turned into flashes of light and attacked one after another. However, these overwhelming flashes of light were still useless. They were inexplicably disintegrated by the mysterious force. Master, what's going on? After countless fruitless attempts, Chen Nan looked at Chu Bei with an unwilling expression, waiting for an answer. Think carefully about what your father did here 10,000 years ago. Chu Bei walked over to Chen Nan and said with a smile. Chen Nan fell into deep thought. After a long while, his eyes lit up. There's an ancient immortal formation outside the 100-Flower Valley. 10,000 years ago, in order to prevent Yusin from being affected by the outside world, his father, Qin Zhan, sent out 108 palm strikes around the 100-Flower Valley. He activated all the restrictions left behind by the ancient immortal and completely sealed off the 100-Flower Valley. Master, please break the enchantment of the lost formation. Chen Nan looked at Chu Bei for help. With his current strength, he didn't have the ability to break the barrier and enter the 100-Flower Valley. Who's hiding there? Come out. However, before Chu Bei could speak, Chen Nan seemed to have discovered something. His expression suddenly changed. As soon as he shouted, Chen Nan suddenly turned into a flash of light and shot towards the east. In the blink of an eye, he appeared above the forest 100 meters away. Boom! Chen Nan kicked downwards, and the violent energy instantly destroyed the dark green forest. In the next moment, Chen Nan was dumbfounded. In the ruins that had been reduced to ashes, there were actually a few animals that were completely unharmed. There was a snow-white rabbit, a fat wild boar, a strong Sika deer, and a crow that was flapping its wings. At this moment, Chu Bei also appeared beside Chen Nan. When he saw the little animals below, his lips curled into a smile. As expected, he still encountered these little monsters. Master, they. Chen Nan pointed at the 4 little animals below. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. The forest had turned into ashes, but these 4 animals were unharmed. This was completely beyond his understanding. Moreover, these 4 animals didn't seem to be afraid of him at all. Their moving eyes looked at him from head to toe. This strange feeling was as if the 2 of them had become animals, and the 4 little animals below who were commenting on them had become humans. Sometimes, what you see may not be true. Chu Bei patted Chen Nan's shoulder again. Although they look no different from ordinary wild beasts, each of them is actually a demon that has cultivated for thousands of years. It's just that they can't completely transform into human form. In addition to the teachings of their ancestors, they can only show this state in front of humans. So they're demons that have cultivated for thousands of years. No wonder they were unharmed under my attack. Chen Nan looked as if he had understood everything. His previous senses weren't wrong. There were indeed eyes secretly observing them just now. However, it wasn't humans who were observing them, but these 4 demons. Chapter 360. Who are you? Why did you come to the 100-Flower Valley? Just then, a clear and melodious voice entered Chu Bei and Chen Nan's ears, as if it came from the mouth of a 15-year-old girl. Heavens! Crow, you are clearly an old monster that has cultivated for thousands of years. Can you not use your current appearance to confuse me? Hearing the young girl's voice, Chen Nan could not help but curse when he found the source of the voice. Because the source of the voice was the crow below. Bah, what are you looking at? I am not a crow, I am the 8th brother princess. If you don't know, don't speak carelessly. Otherwise, it will only expose your crudeness and ignorance. The 8th brother that looked like a crow glared at Chen Nan. Tell me, why did you come to the 100-Flower Valley? The Snow-White Bunny questioned. What does that have to do with you? Chen Nan shrugged his shoulders at the 4 monsters below. Are you here for the little fairy? The fat wild boar snorted coldly. Little fairy? Chen Nan muttered, then turned his head to look at Chu Bei. Subconsciously, Chen Nan had already regarded Chu Bei as a know-it-all. If my calculations are correct, the little fairy they are talking about is your master's target. Meeting Chen Nan's confused gaze, Chu Bei nodded slightly. Great! You are indeed after the little fairy. Knock them out and throw them out of the Kunlun Mountains. As soon as the Sika deer finished speaking, it leaped up and its front hooves slammed down on Chen Nan's chest. However, its hoof pierced right through Chen Nan's chest. It missed! This time, it was the 4 monsters who were shocked. The human disappeared, leaving behind a dazzling golden light. Attack together! The 4 monsters looked at each other and made a decision. Ice blades, fire dragons, wind blades, lightning balls, and all sorts of powerful magic attacks were thrown at Chen Nan. After a while, let's take a break, don't worry about them. The little white bunny was the first to stop attacking. The human could not do anything to them, and they could not do anything to the human either. They were clearly monsters, but the other party's methods were even more demonic than theirs. He could even make his body disappear. I agree with Bunny. After all, the 2 of them can't crack the enchantment. The Sika deer also gave up and turned to walk into Centauria Valley. As soon as the 4 demons entered the 100 Flowers Valley, they made funny faces at Chen Nan and Chu Bei, and even faced them with their butts. "Master, these little demons don't respect you at all. Don't you think you should make a move and teach them a lesson? Let them know that there's always someone better out there, and that they shouldn't be too arrogant." After glancing at the 4 demons, Chen Nan cupped his fists at Chu Bei with a respectful look on his face. "Teaching them a lesson is secondary. The main reason is to enter the 100-Flower Valley as soon as possible." Chu Bei saw through Chen Nan's thoughts with a single glance. Then, he pointed at the stream below and earnestly said, "Do you know why the water in the stream can flow into the valley, but the fish in the water can't?" Chen Nan shook his head. "Please enlighten me." "There are 2 ways to enter the 100-Flower Valley. The first is to find the array core of the ancient immortal formation and destroy it. The array core is usually inside the formation. The second is to destroy it with overwhelming force from outside the formation." Chu Bei was calm and composed. After saying this, he pointed his finger. "Chi!" With a piercing sound, a dazzling golden light shot out from Chu Bei's fingertip, forming a path of light that shot towards the entrance of the valley. Crack! A huge energy wave shook the entire Kunlun mountain range. A barrier made of interweaving runes appeared around the 100-Flower Valley. However, in the next moment, the barrier that was originally hidden in the void seemed to have been destroyed by a terrifying force. It was disintegrating piece by piece, turning into a rain of light and dissipating. Soon, the fragrance of flowers and plants in the valley surged into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it filled the entire Kunlun mountain range. The ancient immortal formation has been broken. And it was destroyed from the outside. How is that possible? Who is he? Didn't the ancestors say that only humans above the 6th level can forcefully break the barrier? Could it be that he has already reached the immortal martial realm? It can't be. If he is an immortal martial realm expert, why would he appear here? He should have reached the heavenly realm long ago. In the 100-Flower Valley, the 4 demons who had yet to leave glanced at the dissipating barrier. Then, they looked at each other in dismay. Their eyes were filled with astonishment, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. "The barrier has been broken. Master, you're mighty." Chen Nan's face was filled with excitement as he shouted emotionally. After realizing that he had lost his composure, Chen Nan hurriedly coughed dryly. "Master, the question you asked me earlier? Why can the stream flow into the valley, but the fish in the water can't enter the valley?" Chu Bei shrugged. "I don't know the answer to this question." Hearing this, the corners of Chen Nan's mouth twitched. "Then why are you asking me?" "I just want to take this opportunity to tell you that in the face of strength, even if there are some questions you don't know, they can be easily resolved." At this point, Chu Bei tidied his clothes and pointed at the stream below again. "Look, now the fish can enter the valley." Chen Nan was speechless. The cool breeze blew gently, and the surroundings were filled with the fragrance of flowers and plants. After Chu Bei broke the barrier, not only the 100-Flower Valley, but the entire Kunlun mountain range was filled with divine energy. It was overflowing with colorful lights and was filled with a holy aura. Chu Bei Chen Nan and Chu Bei Chen Nan walked on a small path in the valley. On both sides of the path, there were strange trees that they couldn't name. Their branches were green and their leaves were green, sparkling and translucent. Their colorful fruits gave off a rich fragrance. The 4 demons put away their playful expressions and followed behind Chu Bei with serious expressions. They seemed to be a little afraid of Chu Bei as they maintained a distance of nearly 100 meters from him. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion in the center of the 100-Flower Valley. At the location of the explosion, a ball of dazzling light shone like 10 suns in the sky. In their line of sight, the thousands of sceneries in the valley lost their color. The mysterious light seemed to become the only thing in the valley. In the next moment, a fragrance like orchids and musk wafted from the explosion area. This fragrance was different from the fragrance of flowers and fruits in the air. It gave people an indescribable feeling. It was simple, hazy, harmonious, and peaceful. It made people relax involuntarily, and their hearts feel empty. Master, there seems to be something up ahead. And this fragrance, it's so special. Qiannan glanced at the explosion area in the distance, and took a deep breath. There was an intoxicated expression on his face. This fragrance seemed to be able to make people forget all their worries, and their hearts feel peaceful. That's the destination of our trip. Chu Bei raised his hand and pointed at the location of the explosion. Is Yusin there? Hearing Chu Bei's words, Qiannan's voice trembled. Because that strange person broke the ancient immortal barrier, the energy from the outside world surged in. The fairy was born early. We can finally see the little fairy. I want to give her all my treasures. Little Rabbit and Wild Boar were excited. The fairy's birth caused such a big commotion. The Bone King and the others must know. If we're late, they'll definitely kidnap the fairy. We can't let the fairy fall into their hands. After Eighth Brother's reminder, the other three demons' expressions changed instantly. Then, the Sika deer shook its body and stood up, transforming into a monster with a deer head and a human body. Almost at the same time, Eighth Brother, Little Rabbit, and Wild Boar also transformed into monsters with a beast head and a human body. With a whoosh, they flew toward the explosion area. Master, let's hurry up and follow. Looking at the four demons in the distance, Qiannan had a bad feeling. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash of light. In an instant, Chu Bei and Qiannan appeared in the central area of the 100-Flower Valley. In the center of the explosion, the originally dazzling light had faded. The light had turned from intense to gentle. In the center of a towering tree, a crystal-clear flower bud swayed gently. A rainbow light flowed slowly. The flower bud was 1.5 feet in diameter. Below it were 9 crystal-clear jade leaves. The entire flower looked like it was carved from divine jade. At this moment, the area around the towering ancient tree had become a gathering place for demons. Among them, there were many strange beasts of unique species, such as horned snakes, two-headed monkeys, incomparably huge ants, flying centipedes. In terms of aura, at least 10 of them were no weaker than the Sika deer and Eighth Brother Princess. Bone King, with us here, don't even think about taking the fairy. Eighth Brother Princess and the Sika deer landed in front of the ancient tree. Immediately, a group of demons gathered behind them. Clearly, they were the leaders of the demons in the 100-Flower Valley. Fairy? What a joke! She's clearly an opportunity bestowed by the heavens. Once she's born, we'll be able to break through our shackles and become sacred beasts. The one who spoke was a white tiger with bone wings on its back. Because it maintained its original form, its body was nearly 10 times larger than an ordinary tiger. It was like a small mountain. This white tiger was also the king of this forest. Due to its bone wings, it was called the Bone King. Beside it, there were several huge demonic beasts standing side by side. It was obvious that they were on the same side as it. Master, is Yusin in that flower bud? Qiannan looked at Chu Bei and asked tentatively. The aura released by the swaying flower bud gave him a very familiar feeling. Yes and no. Chu Bei nodded and then shook his head. His answer was mysterious. Why are you guys here too? Now there's more trouble. Eighth Brother Princess glared fiercely at Chu Bei. If you guys really entered the 100-Flower Valley for the little fairy, even if we can't beat you, we'll risk our lives to protect the little fairy. Chu Bei ignored Eighth Brother Princess's threat. To him, these demons were just a matter of a slap. You keep talking about the little fairy? How much do you know about this flower bud? Qiannan's eyes were fixed on Eighth Brother Princess. The ancestor said that this immortal puppet has been nurtured for 3,000 years. It only developed consciousness in recent years. The ancestor also said that the immortal puppet is nurturing a lost fairy. In the future, it will be the king of the demons in Kunlun Mountain. Rabbit, why are you telling this to a human? Just as the little white rabbit said a few words, Princess Mina snorted. Lost fairy? Qiannan whispered. He couldn't be as calm as Chu Bei. His eyes were fixed on the immortal puppet flower bud, waiting for it to bloom. Chapter 361. The sun rose from the east, shining brightly. Thousands of beasts were quietly scattered around the towering ancient tree, all of them focused on the immortal flower above the ancient tree. After a long wait, the seven-colored flower bud finally moved with a loud rumble. Thousands of rays of light gathered into a pillar of light that shone on the rainbow flower bud. Bang! With a thunderous explosion, a petal bloomed. Bang, 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 bang. Another 4 explosions and 4 petals bloomed. The rainbow flower bud had a total of 9 petals. When all the petals bloomed, the rainbow light illuminated the sky, and the entire Kunlun mountain range could see this phenomenon. It was also at this moment that the immortal chi in the 100-flower valley gushed out. The thousands of beasts under the towering ancient tree were intoxicated, unable to stop themselves from enjoying it. He he he, just as the beasts were immersed in the fantasy world of immortal chi, a childish laughter came from the blossoming rainbow flower bud. The ethereal laughter broke the peace of the 100-flower valley. Following that, a 3-year-old girl appeared in front of the group of demonic beasts, and Chu Bei-chin Nan. The girl was sitting on the immortal flower, swinging her fair legs happily. Her pure smile was so natural, as if all the smiles in the world would appear fake and pale under this smile. This extremely healing smile did not seem to belong to this chaotic mortal world. More holy than an angel, more beautiful than an elf. This is our little fairy. Princess Ba and the Cicad deer looked at the girl in a daze. The girl was like a jade sculpture. Her sparkling skin was faintly flowing with light, and her big sparkling eyes were like black gemstones. Ha ha, this is the gift that the heavens have given us. The winged white tiger called Bone King came back to his senses and roared excitedly. He flapped his wings and instantly appeared beside the girl. His eyes were filled with greed as he looked at the girl. Don't touch it! Unknowingly, Chen Nan's body had begun to tremble. When he saw Bone King rush to the girl's side, he could not help but roar, and a layer of golden light condensed on the surface of his fist. At the same time, Chen Nan soared into the air and smashed into Bone King's huge body. A mere human ant dares to invade! The Bone King glanced at Chen Nan in disdain and slammed his huge claws down. Bang! With a loud bang, the golden light on Chen Nan's fist shattered. Perhaps it was because of the little girl, but Chen Nan was so out of control that he didn't even elementalize his body when facing the Bone King's sharp claws. Immediately, the violent energy from the sharp claws bombarded his body. Poochie! Chen Nan spat out a mouthful of blood. His body shot out like a cannonball and landed at Chu Bei's feet. His face was pale. Master, that is Yu Xian's aura. I beg you to save her, I beg you to take action. Chen Nan ignored his own injuries and gripped Chen Nan's arm tightly with both hands. His eyes were bloodshot. Don't worry, even if you don't say anything, no one can hurt her. Chu Bei gently pushed Chen Nan's hands away and spoke calmly. In the blink of an eye, he appeared above the winged white tiger. Another reckless human! The winged white tiger coldly glanced at Chu Bei and stomped its 4 claws in the air. The terrifying energy in its body surged like an ocean and formed a terrifying light beam above its head. Chu Bei's expression was calm. He smiled faintly and raised his right hand. An extremely strong energy halo quickly condensed in his palm. Then, he slapped the energy beam above the winged white tiger's head. His palm was simple and direct. Crack! Just as Chu Bei's palm struck the beam of light, the circle of light in the center of his palm suddenly expanded. First, it disintegrated the energy beam as easily as breaking rotten wood. Then, it ruthlessly smashed into the head of the winged white tiger. Suddenly, the sound of a skull breaking reverberated in the air. With a loud bang, the winged white tiger's mountain-like body smashed into the ground, creating a deep blood pit. If one looked carefully, there was a small amount of white brain matter at the edge of the deep pit. As the wind blew, the air gradually filled with the smell of blood. The Bone King's aura has disappeared. Our enemy who has been opposing us for nearly 1,000 years is dead just like that. He killed a lord with a single punch. Who is he? Fortunately, the opponent we chose outside was not powerful. Otherwise, the four of us would have become corpses by now. The Cicadier and Princess Ba glanced at the corpses in the deep pit, then at the calm and collected Chubei. They subconsciously swallowed their saliva and had a look of relief on their faces. As for the ferocious beasts that belonged to the Bone King, they glanced at Chubei, who was standing in the air, and took a few steps back. Their eyes were filled with fear. "Who are you?" an ethereal voice sounded. The little girl blinked her big watery eyes and looked at Chubei. Her pair of little feet bounced and jumped on the fairy carpet. Her shoulder-length black hair swayed gently. "Who I am is not important. What's important is that you know who he is." As soon as his calm voice fell, Chubei appeared beside Chen-Nan with the little girl in his arms. Chen-Nan's hands trembled as he carefully took the little girl from Chubei's arms. His every movement was extremely gentle. "Brother, the aura on your body feels very familiar. But I just can't remember. Are you my relative?" The little girl's childish voice was filled with confusion. Chen-Nan's body shook violently. This was the first sentence the little girl had said to him since she was born. This familiarity, who else could it be other than Yusin? Looking at the little girl, a beautiful young lady in white appeared in Chen-Nan's mind. The young lady was untainted by the aura of the mortal world, just like a fairy who had descended from the heavens. Waves of memories surged from the depths of his mind. "Bad guy, why are you always following me? Bad guy, don't make excuses for yourself. I don't want you to follow me. There are two paths here that lead in opposite directions. We'll each take one. Bad guy, have you been following me on purpose? Bad guy, what are you trying to do? My name is Yusin. Master picked me up from the flowers on a rainy night. When you're old, you can still remember a girl called Yusin." The memories of the past surged in Chen-Nan's mind. Everything seemed to have happened just yesterday. "Brother, why are you crying? Seeing you cry makes me feel so bad. I want to cry too." The little girl's sobs pulled Chen-Nan back from his memories. The little girl's big, watery eyes were filled with tears and they rolled down her cheeks. "It's my fault. Brother, don't cry." Chen-Nan suppressed the sadness in his heart and reached out to gently wipe away the little girl's tears. "Brother, I like you." The little girl's fair little hands suddenly hugged Chen-Nan's neck. "Master, is she Yusin's reincarnation?" As Chen-Nan caressed the little girl, he tilted his head and asked Chubei in a probing manner. Although the little girl in front of him had Yusin's aura, she was still a child after all. She was no longer the beautiful young lady from 10,000 years ago. "Reincarnation? No." Chubei shook his head. "This is the incarnation she left behind in the 100 Immortal Valley." "Incarnation?" Hearing this word from Chubei's mouth, Chen-Nan's entire body trembled. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. His eyes were wide open. "He's only one person. No matter how powerful he is, he only has two hands. But there are tens of thousands of us. Attack together!" At this moment, a red rhinoceros glanced at the white tiger's corpse in the pit. After hesitating for a moment, it turned around and gave an order to the demon beasts behind it. The demon beasts seemed to be afraid of Chubei's strength. They looked at each other, and no one dared to step forward. Roar! At this moment, a wolf howl sounded. A green wolf with sharp horns appeared beside the red rhinoceros. "The consequences of not attacking is death!" With a cold shout, the green wolf raised its claws and smashed the head of a demon beast. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. "Attack together!" Due to the pressure of the green wolf leader, the demon beasts who were still hesitating had no choice but to make a decision. They howled and pounced on Chubei. Suddenly, the earth trembled and the trees collapsed. Looking at the millions of demon beasts swarming over like locusts, Chubei's expression did not change. He was still calm and composed. In the next moment, his body slowly rose into the air. His two hands moved slightly in the air, drawing a square area with his hands. As Chubei pointed out with his finger, tens of millions of light bullets suddenly surged out from the square area that he had circled out. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These light bullets were densely packed like raindrops. They poured down on the demon beasts at lightning speed. In almost an instant, a bloody scene was set off. Not only were there many light bullets, but the energy they contained was also very terrifying. Even a demon beast with the strength of a fourth rank would explode into countless pieces of flesh when hit by the light bullets, not to mention the weaker demon beasts. Because of this, countless demon beasts were turned into flesh and blood before they could even scream. Some of the demon beasts thought of running away, but the light bullets covered a large area. There was nowhere to hide. In the end, they could not escape the fate of death. In just a few breaths, the fairyland that was originally filled with the fragrance of flowers and dense spiritual energy turned into a bloody hell. Old Bull, are we still going to attack? Looking at the sea of blood in front of them, Green Wolf subconsciously glanced at the red rhinoceros beside him. His voice was filled with fear. We are not his match. Run! The red rhinoceros was very straightforward. After glancing at Chubei with fear, it turned into a long rainbow and rushed into the distance at its maximum speed. Green Wolf and the other demon beast leaders did not hesitate. They did not care about their so-called dignity and fled in different directions. Chubei smiled and didn't kill these leaders. He admired these people who had a sense of awareness. Eighth brother, the little fairy is in that human's arms. What do we do now? The spotted deer stared at Chen-nan and asked. What else can we do? Are we going to snatch it? Don't you see the demon blood on the ground? Eighth brother princess looked unwilling. At the same time, she glanced at Chubei angrily. Say, where did this person come from? He is stronger than I thought. If we make a move, we might turn into minced meat in the next moment. For a moment, eighth brother princess, the spotted deer, and the wild boar leaders did not dare to act rashly. They could only observe the situation quietly. Master, if she is an incarnation, then where is Yusin's real body? Chen-nan glanced at the thousands of demon beast corpses and fixed his gaze on Chubei with gratitude. There was anxiety between his brows. Don't worry, I will bring you there. After saying that, Chubei raised his hand and waved at the 7-colored flower bud that had bloomed above the ancient tree. A blue light shot out from the flower bud. It was a piece of top-grade blue jade. When the blue jade entered his hand, Chen-nan's expression froze. A sour feeling rose in his heart. On the surface of the blue jade, there were 4 clear words. Love you for 10,000 years. Chen-nan caressed the familiar handwriting, and his vision blurred again. He seemed to see a lonely figure. Her slender hands trembled as she engraved this heartfelt cry on the jade. Master. A light breeze blew past. Chen-nan's voice was choked with emotion. After dealing with the matters here, let's continue our journey. Chubei shook his head. He could not bear to tell this infatuated man that although his Yusin was still alive, she was no longer the Yusin from 10,000 years ago. Brother, why are you crying again? The little girl pouted. Her bright eyes were filled with tears again. Little girl, do you like this brother? Before Chen-nan could speak, Chubei had already carried the little girl in his arms. I like him. The little girl looked at Chen-nan first, then nodded obediently at Chubei. The brother you like has already acknowledged me as his master. Do you want to acknowledge me as your master too? This way, you can follow us in the future. Chubei said patiently. Okay. The little girl nodded without hesitation and smiled happily. Master, are you going to accept her as your disciple too? Chen-nan was surprised. Why? Don't you want her to be your junior sister? Chubei smiled. No, of course I do. Chen-nan shook his head. Host has signed Qinshi, level 14 item access progress 40%, mission 4, enter the land of death and obtain the purple blood jade ray. Before the mission is completed, the host can use a level 16 item once. With Chen-nan's help, Qinshi successfully became a level 1 agent. Almost at the same time, the system's voice rang in Chubei's mind with a new mission. The land of death? That's a dangerous place. Looking at the new red dot on the map, Chu Bei mumbled to himself. Fortunately, the system was kind enough to give him a one-time access to a level 16 item. Master, she doesn't have a name yet. Why don't you give her a name? Chen Nan pointed at Qinshi and asked. She was born in the morning glow. Let's call her Qinshi from now on. Chu Bei came back to his senses and pretended to think before replying. Okay, I'll be called Qinshi from now on. Hearing the name, the little girl was very excited. Master, where is Yusin? Chen Nan looked at Chu Bei again and could not help but ask. Don't worry, I'll take you there. Chu Bei patted Chen Nan's shoulder and said, As for now, I'll take you to another place. Master, brother, are we leaving? Qinshi wants to say goodbye to them. As she spoke, Qinshi flew in front of Princess Ba and the Sika deer. Although I've never seen you before, I can recognize your aura. Thank you for telling me stories all these years. Chapter 362. Little fairy, do you really want to go with the humans? You still don't know if they are good or bad people. What if they have ulterior motives? Princess Eighth Brother's eyes were red. Little Dawn nodded. I like Big Brother and Master. I like the smell of their bodies. In the future, Master, Big Brother, and I will come back to visit you often. After bidding farewell to Princess Eighth Brother, Sika deer, and the other leaders, Chu Bei took Qin Nan and Little Dawn to the west. High up in the sky. Master, there are acquaintances from Chu country in front. Should we go up and say hello? During the flight, Qin Nan recognized the person in front of him and asked Chu Bei who was beside him. Since we have met, naturally we should greet them. With a smile, Chu Bei, Chen Nan, and Qinshi appeared on top of a flying dragon. On top of the flying dragon, an old man and two young girls sat cross-legged. Ancestor Xian, it's them! Chu Bei, Chen Nan, and Qinshi had just landed on the back of the flying dragon when Chuyu screamed in horror. What a coincidence! We can meet Senior here. Chu Ao got up and quickly greeted Chu Bei. Where are you going? Chu Bei said indifferently. An old friend knows that I have come out of seclusion and invited me to meet him. Also, the land of death has opened. I can join in the fun. In front of Chu Bei, Chu Ao did not put on the airs of a sixth-stage powerhouse. Land of death? Hearing Chu Ao mention the name of the location of the next mission, Chu Bei was slightly stunned. After recalling the plot of the Land of Death, he asked, Have the candidates to enter the Land of Death this year been decided? Recently, the young generation of the 4 academies have been sparring at the God Wind Academy. It seems that the top 10 will be decided today. According to the restrictions of the Land of Death in previous years, the candidates should be these 10. Chu Ao nodded and then looked at Chu Bei curiously. With Senior's cultivation, why do you care about this? Chu Bei smiled. Recently I have nothing to do, so I want to go to the Land of Death. Senior, the Land of Death is not a place you can enter just because you want to. It just so happened that the weaker one was, the smaller the restrictions. With your cultivation, I'm afraid you won't be able to enter. Chu Ao replied. A mere restriction can't restrain me. With that said, Chu Bei looked at Qin Nan. The 4 great academies are sparring. You can also rightfully obtain a spot to enter. Before I bring you to see Yusin, I hope that you will be as strong as possible. According to the plot, Yu Xian had already become a corpse king in the Chasing Corpse sect. With Qin Nan's temperament, he would definitely lose his composure when he saw the corpse king Yu Xian. Under such circumstances, killing was the best way to appease the resentment in his heart. Strength was the key to a successful massacre. With Qin Nan's current strength, he would not be able to cause too much of a stir in the Chasing Corpse sect. Stars dotted the sky, and the night was like water. Under the bright moonlight, a dragon carried a group of people above the city of Sin. The night in the city of Sin was not tranquil. Many places were brightly lit throughout the night, and it was extremely noisy. After going through streets after streets, the flying dragon landed in front of an academy. Old E, come out and receive the guests. Chu Ao roared, and his vigorous voice spread far and wide. After a while, an old man with a goatee appeared in front of the gate. "Madman Chu, you really broke through. Congratulations!" Feeling the majestic aura in Chu Ao's body, the old man with the goatee patted Chu Ao's shoulder heavily, and his words were full of envy. "You will also have a day like this." Chu Ao tidied his clothes, and his face was filled with pride. "These 3 little guys are your descendants?" The old man with the goatee glanced at Chu Bei, Chen Nan, and Chu Yu and asked. Cough, cough, cough. Hearing the old man's words, Chu Ao's face suddenly changed, and then he pulled the old man to the side, and whispered something. The old man with the goatee's expression began to change, from confusion to astonishment, and then to shock. After a long while, the old man with the goatee respectfully walked to Chu Bei's side, and made a gesture of invitation. "I offended you before, please forgive me. It is my honor to have seen you at the Divine Wind Academy. Our academy has already prepared a first-class guest room, please. Thank you for your trouble." Chu Bei cupped his fists towards Yifeng. "Old Yi, your condition doesn't seem right. What kind of trouble have you encountered?" Chu Ao was puzzled. Sigh. Yifeng let out a long sigh. "In the past years, my Divine Wind Academy had at least 2 quotas to explore the land of death. But this year, even the predetermined quota was snatched away. What exactly happened?" Chu Ao frowned and asked. The land of death would open once a year, and the place where it opened was located in a vast mountain range 100 kilometers away from the Divine Wind Academy. Because of the restriction in the land of death, only 10 people could enter each year, and their cultivation level must be below the 5th level. After figuring out the restriction, the 4 great academies of the continent, the Divine Wind Academy, the Immortal Martial Academy, the Ares Academy, and the Magic Illusion Academy, jointly organized the continent's strongest youth competition. Among them, the top 10 of the competition would obtain the qualifications to enter the land of death. To be exact, only 6 quotas were obtained from this competition, because each of the 4 great academies had a predetermined quota. The reason why the 4 great academies wanted to explore the land of death, other than the existence of the ancient immortal plant, was that there was still a living demon god in the land of death. No one knew the name of this demon god, only that he was incomparably powerful, so powerful that he could tear apart the heavenly dragon and the blood phoenix. According to legend, if there was a youth that caught his eye, he would receive his inheritance, break through the 6th level, and step into the immortal martial realm. In this year's competition, our academy was unable to obtain the 6 quotas. As for the predetermined quota, it was originally arranged for Wang Feng, but that kid suffered a chi deviation during his cultivation today. Yifeng was somewhat helpless. This news spread out very quickly, and the other 3 great academies thought that other than Wang Feng, no one else had the qualifications to enter the land of death, and unanimously requested that the quota be given to someone more suitable. "Has the quota been handed over?" Chu Bei suddenly asked. "We have tentatively decided on 4 candidates, and the final selection will be decided tomorrow morning," Yifeng immediately replied. "Since it hasn't been decided, what do you think of him?" Chu Bei pushed Chen Nan in front of Yifeng. "Him?" Yifeng sized up Chen Nan and frowned. "Rank 2 cultivation, this is far from being comparable to the 4 candidates. Moreover, he is not a disciple of my God Wind Academy." Through the information revealed by Chu Ao, Yifeng knew that Chu Bei's cultivation was at the immortal martial realm, or even higher. He also wanted to give face to the other party, but because of Chen Nan's cultivation, the other 3 great academies would definitely not allow it. "Chen Nan, show him your skills." Chu Bei glanced at Chen Nan and said. Chen Nan nodded towards Chu Bei, and simply clenched his fist, and punched towards Yifeng. A fist made of intertwined golden light appeared in front of Yifeng in an instant. Yifeng's pupils suddenly shrank, and before he could say anything, the energy in his body burst forth, and he raised his palm to meet the attack. Bang! With a loud bang, the golden light fist dissipated. "You, how did you do that?" Yi Feng looked at Qin Nan in astonishment. He couldn't see through the other party's method, and for a moment, the other party's fist seemed to have turned into light. Moreover, the other party's cultivation was obviously at the second level, but the previous punch had the strength of the fourth level. Old Yi, sometimes you can't just look at people on the surface. If he could use the Hoi Bao, I'm afraid you wouldn't be so calm to receive his attack. Chueo looked at Yi Feng with ridicule. You mean he can draw the Hoi Bao? Hearing Chueo's words, Yi Feng's mouth opened slightly. Now do you think he is qualified to compete with the 4 candidates? Chu Bei calmly looked at Yi Feng. His strength is definitely enough. Yi Feng scratched his head. But he is not a disciple of the God Wind Academy. That's easy to say. From now on, he is a disciple of your God Wind Academy, Chu Bei said with a smile. Yi Feng looked at Qin Nan excitedly. What do you mean? Master's meaning is my meaning, Qin Nan seriously replied. The next day, early in the morning, the sun shone in all directions. A rainbow hung high in the sky, adding a beautiful scenery to the mountain where the God Wind Academy was located. At this moment, the square of the God Wind Academy was crowded with people. A large number of young experts from Aries Academy, Fantasy Magic Academy, and Immortal Martial Academy were gathered together. As for the elders of each academy, they were sitting on specially arranged high platforms. Brother Yi, these 4 little guys are ready to make a move. You can announce the battle between them. The vice principal of Aries Academy politely cupped his fist to Yi Feng. Today, no matter who gets this spot, you have to thank the God Wind Academy. After all, this spot was given by the God Wind Academy. The vice principal of Fantasy Magic Academy stood up and glanced at the 4 youths. Everyone, I'm sorry to disappoint you. My God Wind Academy can't give up this spot. Yi Feng's voice fell, and the other 3 vice principals' faces changed. Brother Yi, listening to your words, could it be that Wang Feng has recovered? Even if that's the case, I'm afraid it's not suitable for him to enter the land of death in his current state. The 3 vice principals dissuaded. Haha, Wang Feng's injuries haven't healed yet. It's just that our direct disciple who has been training outside has returned. Naturally, this spot will be given to him. Yi Feng pointed at Qin Nan. Direct disciple? Second stage? The 3 vice principals looked at each other and mocked. Brother Yi, are you joking with us? With his strength, I'm afraid he'll be trembling in fear in front of the nameless fiend god. Then let's compare notes. Chu Bei took a step forward and said indifferently. This is a conversation between us. How can you, a disciple, interrupt? Pun. Before the vice principal of Aries Academy could finish his words, he was hit by a huge force. His face turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his whole body shot out like a cannonball and smashed into a stone tablet. The vice principals of Fantasy Magic Academy and Immortal Martial Academy took a step back at the same time to distance themselves from Chu Bei. Their faces were full of vigilance. This unknown person's casual attack was actually able to seriously injure a 5th stage Great Ascension stage cultivator. Fortunately, they weren't the ones who shouted just now. Otherwise, the result would be the same. Immediately after, the clothes of the 4 stage 4 youths were torn apart. Their faces were pale, and they were panting heavily. In just a single exchange, the result of the battle was decided. The 4 youths who were favored for the preliminaries were completely defeated. Do you have anything else you want to say now? Chu Bei's mocking gaze swept across the 3 vice deans. The 3 vice deans looked at each other. They wanted to say that Qin Nan had relied on the Hoi Bao to obtain victory, but when they met Chu Bei's cold gaze, they swallowed all their words back into their stomachs. They could only remain silent. Since you have no objections, then prepare to bring these 10 candidates to the land of death. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little stagnant, Yi Feng stepped out and laughed. After Yi Feng finished speaking, people walked out one after another and stood side by side with Chen Nan. These people were all young experts who were about to enter the land of death. Other than Chen Nan, there were 2 from Ares College, 2 from Phantom College, 2 from Immortal Martial College, 1 from the Tantai Sacred Land, and 2 from 2 ancient families. The successor of the Tantai Sacred Land was a woman in her 20s. She wore a white dress and her beautiful black hair was naturally draped over her shoulders. Her snow-white skin was like a beautiful jade, faintly shining. The moment the woman walked to the front row, Chu Bei's and Chen Nan's expressions changed at the same time. Chu Bei's expression was a little more playful. He saw through the woman's identity at a glance. Meng Ke, one of the 7 absolute fairies, the most outstanding disciple of the Tantai ancient sacred land. In the original plot, Chen Nan and Meng Ke had always been in opposition, but in the end, they became husband and wife for some inconceivable reason and had 3 children. Especially that, 100 times, Chu Bei still remembered it clearly. As for Chen Nan, the moment he saw Meng Ke, his originally calm expression had a hint of anger. He was not in the mood to admire this woman's beauty at all, because this woman was very similar to the woman who had almost caused him to lose his cultivation 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years had passed. Since he had woken up, the first thing he had to do was to find Yu Xian, and then find that woman to end their grudge. I didn't fight with the 4 of them to my heart's content. I wonder if you can give me some pointers? Chen Nan narrowed his eyes and immediately invited Meng Ke. Boring. Meng Ke calmly rejected. 15 minutes later. White clouds floated by. Hundreds of wyverns flew high in the sky, while the green peaks and valleys below were quickly passing by. There were nearly 10 figures standing on the back of each wyvern. As time passed, the crowd came to a place 100 kilometers away from the Godwind Academy. Senior, that is the Death Impasse. Yifeng said to Chu Bei. The direction he pointed to was a towering mountain. The mountain was shrouded in dark clouds, giving people a heavy and oppressive feeling, like a demon cloud, like a demonic fog. The wind whistled, and when they were less than 100 meters away from the Death Impasse, all the wyverns began to tremble inexplicably, and one by one began to become restless and roar. Let's stop here, we'll leave the rest to the 10 of them. The crowd jumped off the wyverns and stared at the towering mountain in front of them. After staring at it for a long time, they could not help but feel an extremely uneasy feeling, and a chill rose in their hearts. Looking carefully, the towering mountain was surrounded by a thin layer of black smoke. Obviously, this was the Death Impasse's barrier. Chenxi, Big Brother has to go in. You wait here obediently for Big Brother to come back. Along the way, Chen Nan and Chu Yu had become familiar with each other, and entrusted little Chenxi to her. Little Chenxi's eyes were filled with tears, and she bit her pink lips and said, Big Brother, you must come back soon, Chenxi can't leave you for too long. Chen Nan pinched little Chenxi's white and tender cheeks and said softly, Big Brother also can't bear to part with Chenxi. I will definitely come back as soon as possible. While Chen Nan was comforting little Chenxi, the other 9 young experts had entered the Death Impasse one after another. After a long while, Chen Nan wiped away Chenxi's tears and looked at Chu Bei. Master, let's go in. In. Chu Bei nodded slightly and walked towards the Death Impasse. Looking at Chu Bei, who was following behind Chen Nan, Yifeng hurriedly said, Senior, this Death Impasse's barrier has restrictions. With your cultivation you can't. However, Yifeng's words stopped halfway, and his expression turned stiff. He stared blankly at the direction where Chu Bei disappeared, as if he had turned into a wooden puppet. The other 3 vice deans were also stunned, and their exaggerated expressions were filled with disbelief. Under their gazes, that senior with a cultivation above the 6th rank actually walked into the barrier so leisurely. The many years of restriction seemed to have no effect on him. Oldie, what's going on? Isn't there only 10 people who can enter the Death Impasse every year? Moreover, their cultivation must be below the 5th rank. The Vice Dean of the Illusory Demon Academy was the first to regain his senses, and he looked at Yifeng in confusion. Could it be that this year's Death Impasse is different from the past? Without these restrictions? Let me try. The vice dean of the Immortal Martial Academy was excited and eager to give it a try, but when his body came into contact with the faint black mist around the towering mountain, his body suddenly trembled. Following that, an incomparably violent energy surged out from the black mist, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Sigh, if you don't seek death, you won't die. Chu Ao shook his head in sympathy. Senior can enter. Maybe it's because his strength has already surpassed the fiend god who set up this restriction back then? You guys actually imitated him. You really don't know what's good for you. The vice dean of the Immortal Martial Academy glared fiercely at Chu Ao. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Ao had already broken through to the 6th rank, he would have already used his fist to shout at him. After passing through the barrier, it was the so-called Death Impasse. The so-called Death Impasse was no different from the towering mountain outside, except that the devil clouds lingering above the mountain were thicker. Looking at the direction where the devil clouds rose, it was a huge valley. Countless ghosts floated in the valley, and the terrifying scene made one's heart tremble. I didn't expect there to be such a fragrance here. After taking 2 steps, Chen-Nan smelled a fragrance that was like orchids and musk. The faint fragrance was refreshing. Do you know what this fragrance is? Chubei smiled and looked at Chen-Nan. Master, please tell me, Chen-Nan said curiously. The fragrance you smell is the smell of the death flower. For every person who dies here, there will be one more death flower. Speaking until here, Chubei pointed ahead. Those are the death flowers. Hearing that, Chen-Nan immediately looked in the direction Chubei was pointing. With one look, he suddenly trembled. 100 meters away, there was a sea of flowers. The color of these flowers was very strange. Some were black, some were blood red. In terms of quantity, there were at least tens of millions of them. Thinking back to what Chubei said earlier, that each flower represented a dead person, Chen-Nan subconsciously moved his throat. In other words, at least tens of millions of people were buried in this valley. Master, what exactly happened here? What is the origin of the Death Impasse? You must know something, right? Chen-Nan took a deep breath and looked at Chubei expectantly. You have to find the answer yourself. Chubei pretended to be mysterious and smiled slyly. With your current strength, it's useless to tell you all this. What you need to do now is to quickly raise your cultivation base and strength. All right, disciple understands, Chen-Nan replied helplessly. Chapter 364. Senior, how did you get in? Only those below the 5th rank can pass through this restriction. Menger and the others, who were the first to enter, noticed Chubei's presence. Their words were filled with astonishment. Meeting the questioning gaze of Menger and the others, Chubei smiled. The world is so big, I can go anywhere. Senior, since you're here, why don't you take us to find the nameless fiend god? Then we won't have to run around like headless flies. As soon as Menger spoke, the other 8 people nodded in agreement. Looking at their expressions, it was as if they had found their backbone. You guys can do whatever you want. The corners of Chubei's mouth curled into a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, he followed the red dot marked on the system map and unhurriedly walked towards the valley where the black fog originated from. Everywhere he passed, there were tragic scenes. Bones could be seen everywhere. Under the light of the phosphorescent fire, it emitted a strong aura of death. What a damned place! A young expert from the Magical Fantasy Academy couldn't help but complain. This valley was like the entrance to hell. The endless white bones were particularly dazzling. The bone powder on the ground was like a pale white fog under the breeze, making one's scalp numb. The deeper they went, the stronger the fragrance of the death flower. Although it was refreshing, when they thought of its origin, they couldn't help but feel disgusted. Rumble! Just as the group passed through a valley, the ground suddenly shook. Then, the thick black fog in the center quickly gathered as if it had a consciousness. The rolling black fog was like a surging river. Its speed was extremely fast, and its momentum was great. This black fog is strange. Everyone be careful! The young expert from the Immortal Martial Academy shouted and took the lead to activate his Jinqi to protect his body. Because of the speed of the black fog, Mengke and the others had just activated their Jinqi to support a defensive shield when the rolling black fog had already enveloped the entire valley. In an instant, the demonic clouds in the sky above the valley were surging. It was like a ferocious demon was stirring up trouble. Almost at the same time, the vision of the group of young experts disappeared. It was pitch black in front of them. Everyone, don't get separated! In the darkness, a young man's terrified voice rang out. Subsequently, a group of young experts would step on the bones from time to time, emitting cracking sounds. This added a touch of terror to the current environment. Qi! Qi! The billowing devil Qi continued to corrode the primordial Qi released by the group of young experts, and the friction between the devil Qi and the primordial Qi produced strange noises. How are you guys? Can you still withstand it? This demonic Qi is so powerful. I can't hold on any longer. We made the wrong choice by coming here. Let alone obtaining the nameless fiend god's legacy. We didn't even get to see his face before we died here. Sigh, it's too late to say anything now. The black fog became thicker and thicker, and the auras of the young experts of the various academies became chaotic. If there was light, one could see that each of them had a ferocious look on their faces as they tried their best to circulate their internal energy to resist the corrosion of the devil Qi. However, as time passed, the Yuan Qi in their bodies could no longer keep up with the speed of the demon Qi's corrosion. Their breathing became rapid, and their faces became increasingly pale. Pu Qi. The young experts of the Fantasy Demon Academy mainly focused on magic, and under the circulation of Yuan Qi, they were weaker than the others. They were the first to be corroded by the devil Qi, and a mouthful of black blood spurted out. Damn it! Are we really going to die here? However, just as the young experts of the 4 academies were in despair, a dazzling divine light lit up in the darkness. It's the old senior. How could we forget about him? He's an expert above the 6th rank. He must have a way to save us. Looking at the dazzling divine light, the group of young experts in the darkness seemed to have found a life-saving straw, and their originally fearful expressions eased a little. At this moment, the divine light on the surface of Chu Bei's body bloomed, as if it contained an extremely large amount of energy. The devil Qi in the surroundings seemed to have met its nemesis in front of the divine light, and it was purified into nothingness as soon as it touched it. In the end, the devil Qi directly bypassed Chu Bei, as if he didn't exist. Old senior, please save us. The young experts spoke almost at the same time, and their eyes were filled with pleading. For them, the only person who could save them now was this mysterious person of unknown origin. Chu Bei indifferently glanced at the young experts in the darkness, and immediately waved his hand. Suddenly, a thin curtain of purple light intertwined and pushed forward. Wherever the purple light curtain passed, the billowing black fog quickly retreated and was annihilated. After a while, the valley regained its light. Many thanks to the old senior for saving us. When we get out, we will definitely let Master repay you generously. The devil Qi receded, and the pressure on the group of young experts suddenly disappeared. After looking at each other, they continuously patted their chests. This year's quality is better than last year's. There's actually someone who can disperse my devil Qi. 11 people? They actually broke the restriction here. How strange. Just as the group of young experts were rejoicing that they had escaped death, the black fog that had originally dissipated in the valley reappeared. Compared to before, the black fog this time was thicker. In addition, there was a low and desolate voice mixed with confusion. Puchi, Puchi. The group of young experts did not have time to activate their primordial Qi before they were seriously injured by the newly emerged devil Qi. It's too boring to bully a few little guys. Chu Bei's calm voice fell, and with him as the center, the purple light spread out in an instant, enveloping a radius of thousands of meters. In an instant, the valley that was originally filled with black fog turned into a world filled with purple light. Under the purple divine light, the black fog that had just risen was destroyed and annihilated. The group of young experts stabilized their bodies and looked around. Their eyes finally fixed on Chu Bei, and their faces were full of gratitude. "You have some skills," the low and desolate voice sounded again. The next moment, the young experts clearly perceived an unusual aura. An instinctive spiritual pressure rapidly increased, and their bodies trembled from the soul. If it were not for the protection of the mysterious person in front of them, they were afraid that they would have been directly suppressed by this pressure. After a while, a huge cloud of devil chi appeared in front of Chu Bei. The devil chi fluctuated like a raging sea. With the appearance of the devil chi, a vast and unparalleled spiritual pressure suddenly appeared. The group of young experts suddenly felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their hearts, and their minds were about to collapse. Within the devil chi, a tall and blurry figure gradually became clear. A head of long blood-red hair fluttered freely, and half of the head under the blood-red hair had already been shattered. The area above the left eye was a mess of flesh and blood, with red and white mixed together, and bits of brain matter stained the blood-red hair. The undamaged right eye had no white or pupil, and the entire eyeball was incomparably red, emitting a heart-palpitating blood-red light. What was even more terrifying was that there was a bloody hole in his chest, and his heart was actually nowhere to be found, emitting a dazzling blood-red light from inside. Looking at his back, half of the 12 wings were broken, and it was extremely miserable. "Nameless devil god!" After seeing the appearance of the tall black figure, the expressions of the 4 great academies' young experts froze, and after guessing the other party's identity, their pupils suddenly constricted. However, just as they called out the name, their bodies were confined by a terrifying energy, and they could not move. The young experts looked at each other, and could not help but feel a sense of helplessness in their hearts. In the Tianxian continent, their cultivation was already considered outstanding, and they were at the forefront of the younger generation. Even so, they were like ants in front of the nameless devil god. The other party did not even make a move, and they had already lost control of their bodies, leaving them with no room to resist. Feeling the terrifying aura released by the nameless devil god, Chu Bei frowned. After considering whether to use the level 16 goods, Chu Bei stepped forward, and with his hands behind his back, glanced indifferently at the tall black figure, and pretended to let out a long sigh. "Nameless devil god? Who would have thought that the Devil Master's proudest disciple would not even have a name in the end? How sad!" After sighing, Chu Bei flicked his finger, and a divine light passed through the bodies of the 4 great academies' young experts, and they quickly regained control of their bodies. "Devil Master, so familiar. It's obviously so familiar, but why can't I remember? Who is he, who is he?" At this moment, when the nameless fiend god heard Chu Bei mention the name Demon Master, he suddenly grabbed his blood-red long hair. It was as if he had been greatly stimulated and was on the verge of going berserk. "Don't you even know who you are? Have you forgotten everything that happened 10,000 years ago?" Seeing that the verbal trick was effective, Chu Bei looked straight at the nameless devil god and continued, "Don't you even know why you're guarding this place? Who am I? 10,000 years ago, what happened 10,000 years ago? And why am I here?" The pain in the nameless devil god's eyes intensified, and in the end, several rays of red light shot out of his eyes. "Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" The nameless devil god's body rose into the air, and he kept repeating the same words as if he had gone mad. Gradually, the nameless devil god's immense mental pressure uncontrollably spread out, and the blood in the young experts' bodies surged. "Why are we always the ones who get hurt?" Under the terrifying pressure, the young experts felt the world spin, and they collapsed powerlessly on the ground like dead dogs. As for Qin Nan, he immediately turned his elemental essence into light, but even so, he didn't feel good. There was even an indescribable power that forced him to turn back into his original body in an instant. Only Chu Bei remained calm and composed. It was as if the nameless god-fiend's state was completely within his control. As time passed, the nameless devil god's expression became more and more twisted, and he kept roaring and venting. From the outside, the entire land of death seemed to be shaking. "Tell me, who am I? You must know! Tell me everything you know!" Finally, the nameless devil god's gaze fixed on Chu Bei, and a boundless pressure that seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth surged over like seawater. Chapter 365. But just as the nameless god-fiend's pressure entered Chu Bei's body, it suddenly vanished as if it had never existed. However, the nameless god-fiend had no time to be shocked by Chu Bei's methods. He only cared about who he was and why he was here. "Who is this old senior? From the looks of it, he seems to know the nameless god-fiend. Did you hear the name he just mentioned? The Demon Lord? Who is that?" The old senior is actually a powerful talker. He drove the nameless god-fiend crazy with just a few words. In terms of strength, he's probably not weaker than the nameless god-fiend. Didn't you see that the nameless god-fiend's spiritual pressure had no effect on him? Menke and the other young experts looked at Chu Bei's back in a daze as they discussed in low voices. Chen Nan stood behind Chu Bei, staring blankly at his master's back. He found it harder and harder to see through this master of his. From the very beginning, his master had been waiting in front of his grave for him to be born. Then, he had given him his inheritance, brought him back the Hoi Bao, found Yu Xian's incarnation, met the nameless god-fiend, and listened in on their conversation. His intuition told him that an unparalleled battle had taken place 10,000 years ago, or even longer ago. Some people had survived that battle and even planted some sort of conspiracy. And he was just one of the chess pieces in this conspiracy. As for his master, he believed that even if he wasn't the mastermind of this conspiracy, he was still someone who knew everything. But what was infuriating was that when he asked, his master refused to tell him anything. Seeing Chu Bei remain silent, the nameless god-fiend shook his head and muttered to himself, "I don't know the past, I don't know who I am, and what am I living for?" At some point, the nameless god-fiend had stopped roaring. He just stood quietly in the purple divine light. His eyes were empty, and his tall figure seemed incomparably bleak and lonely. "I didn't think that this nameless god-fiend with boundless strength would be someone who had lost his memories. It seems like he's also a pitiful person." The young expert seemed to be infected by the nameless god-fiend's sorrow. All sorts of complicated emotions arose in their hearts: loneliness, helplessness, loneliness, and hatred. "Let's sit down and talk." Chu Bei slowly walked in front of the nameless god-fiend, and then casually sat down cross-legged. Hearing Chu Bei's words, whether it was Chen Nan, Meng Ke, or the other young experts, they all pricked up their ears. But before they could eavesdrop on the conversation, Chu Bei waved his hand. The next moment, a light prison surged out around them. The light prison first deprived them of their vision, then their hearing, and even their sense of smell. Even Chen Nan was unable to escape this fate. "Please tell me everything you know." But so what if you revive? A new heaven-battling era is about to begin. The heavenly Tao is far superior to the heavens you severed. Chu Bei naturally guessed who it was, but his expression was still calm. When Chu Bei finished speaking, the cold wind became even more terrifying. Specks of black light began to fill the divine light. Vaguely, the bone-chilling cold wind began to mix with a cold voice. It was like a god's howl and a ghost's cry, as if it was refuting Chu Bei's words. The nameless god-fiend seemed to understand something. He looked at Chu Bei in astonishment. He didn't expect this person to be able to talk to that familiar yet terrifying energy. "You're setting up a trap. Heaven Destroyer is setting up a trap. The Ghost Lord is also setting up a trap. The only thing I can do is speed up the process." "Who are you? Who are you?" A low and hoarse voice came from the void. The source of this voice couldn't be found. It was as if it came from hell. Beyond the heavens, there are also people beyond the heavens. I was born in the chaos and grew up in the chaos. The heavenly Tao was born because of me. Because of me, I will bear the consequences, Chu Bei said with a serious expression. Good, good. In the next moment, the cold wind blew away the divine light. After it circled around Chu Bei once, it gradually dissipated. Help him. The cold wind calmed down, leaving behind only 2 soft syllables. The nameless godfiend's body suddenly trembled. He knew these 2 syllables were directed at him. Senior, what do you want me to do? When the cold wind disappeared, the nameless godfiend looked at Chu Bei. There was more respect in his voice. Did you hear that? The nameless godfiend actually called that person senior. What happened when our 5 senses were sealed? Why is the peerless and terrifying godfiend from 10,000 years ago suddenly so respectful to senior? The light prison around the young experts of the 4 great academies shattered. When they heard the nameless godfiend's words, they were all dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Chu Bei was also stunned. He didn't expect that not only did he scare the nameless godfiend, but even the Devil Lord's obsession had come. He even got the nameless godfiend to help him. After regaining his senses, Chu Bei seemed to have thought of something. While looking at the nameless godfiend, he pointed at Chen Nan. With your strength, you should be able to see some clues on him. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the nameless godfiend sized up Chen Nan seriously. At this moment, there was clearly a hint of astonishment in his eyes. You are a dead man. The nameless godfiend looked at Chen Nan in surprise. Can a dead man stand in front of you? Chen Nan rolled his eyes. He wasn't afraid of the nameless godfiend at all. To be precise, you are a living dead man. Chapter 366. This is the seed that Dugu Beitian planted. It was later nourished and formed by the power of the godfiends, Chu Bei said. Senior, what do you want me to do? The nameless godfiend waited for Chu Bei's instructions. Let it completely awaken. Chu Bei pointed at the light ball in Chen Nan's body. The nameless godfiend hesitated for a moment. They are already living creatures. If they awaken, will they use this little guy as a cauldron and wait for the right time to occupy his body? You worry too much. Just do as I say. Chu Bei's voice was indifferent. Yes, senior. As soon as he finished speaking, the nameless godfiend's body shook violently, and a vast and terrifying aura surged out of his body. He waved his hands gently, and an endless amount of dazzling red light flowed from his hands into a gentle red light that slowly flowed into Chen Nan's body. At first, the 2 light balls did not have any reaction, but as the red light around them increased, the 2 light balls began to become restless. They spun wildly, trying to chase away the red light around them. I'll leave him to you for now. After giving his instructions, Chu Bei turned into a divine rainbow and headed toward the red dot on the map. 100 kilometers away from the Colonel, Chu Bei was floating above a dry lake valley. It's here. After arriving at the location marked by the red dot on the map, Chu Bei looked down at the lake valley below and waved his sleeve. In an instant, a saber light formed by intertwining divine light pierced through the void and slashed down at the dry lake valley below. Rumble! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, cracks appeared in the lake valley. Clear spring water gushed out like a water dragon that rushed out of the ground more than 3 meters high. Under the immense pressure, the cracks widened until it completely collapsed. In a few breaths, the originally dry lake valley was filled with spring water that emerged from the ground. An underground lake. Interesting. Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile. Then, his figure flashed as he rushed toward the bottom of the underground lake. The lake water was bone-chillingly cold, but Chu Bei wasn't affected in the slightest. The light in the lake was dim, and even though his vision was extremely blurry, Chu Bei's divine sense covered everything, and nothing could be hidden from him. Soon, Chu Bei arrived at an underground cave. Inside the cave, there were stalactites, stalagmites, stone pillars, stone flowers, stone curtains, stone waterfalls, and so on. They were in all kinds of shapes and sizes, magnificent and magical. At the end of the tunnel was a huge, jade-like hand bone. There was a transparent silk thread wrapped around the hand bone. At the end of the thread, there was a purple jade ray. The jade scepter was very strange. Aside from the dense light flowing on its surface, there was also a blood-like liquid flowing within it. Another mission completed. Looking at the jade ray wrapped around his hand, Chu Bei smiled knowingly. Who is it? However, even as Chu Bei took the jade scepter, a divine will transmit it out from it. Chu Bei was also stunned by the sudden voice. After a while, he recalled that there was still a person living in the purple blood jade ray. Who I am is not important. What's important is that I can help you find yourself. Chu Bei played with the jade scepter. Find myself? Who are you? Do you know me? The intermittent voice came out from the jade scepter. It was a woman's voice. It was gentle and pleasant, as clear as an oriole, but it was a little weak. You are Dugu Xiaoxian, the youngest daughter of the primordial taboo god, Dugu Beitian. In the primordial war, you were seriously injured, and you hid in this purple blood jade scepter to recuperate. Chu Bei rubbed the jade scepter and said calmly, Dugu Xiaoxian? Dugu Beitian? Primordial war? So familiar. But I can't remember. The woman's voice was a little painful, as if she was trying hard to recall something. Your injuries were too serious, and your soul was almost destroyed. It's normal for you to lose your memory. Chu Bei replied indifferently. Help me find my memory. Dugu Shuxuan's voice was mixed with pleading. Before I help you find your memory, you should find another place to live. After saying that, Chu Bei waved his right hand, and a warm jade appeared in his palm. It was something he had obtained from the system. Then, Chu Bei waved his left hand and transferred Dugu Shuxuan's remnant soul from the purple blood jade scepter into the warm jade. Host has received the purple blood jade scepter. Level 14 Commodity Authority has been activated 50%. Mission 5, sign a contract with Zombie King Yusin. Host has not used a single level 16 commodity during the mission. It is now a reward, to be used within 7 days. The system's voice sounded, and Chu Bei nodded with satisfaction. Give me back my things. After receiving the jade scepter, Chu Bei was about to leave with Dugu Xiaoxian when a roar mixed with anger came from behind him. It was a childish voice. Chu Bei turned around to look. It was a 2-foot-long dragon with a pair of wings. Its grayish-brown body was almost the same color as the rocks. At this moment, the little dragon opened its mouth and fiercely whimpered at Chu Bei. Its watery big eyes stared fixedly at Chu Bei. However, due to its small size and the lack of lethality in its howl, not only did it not give off any feeling of fierceness, it instead revealed a touch of cuteness. It even gave people the urge to pinch it. If you don't give it to me, I will beat you up. The little dragon stretched out its claws and pointed at Chu Bei with its sharp claws. After saying those threatening words, it stomped on the ground fiercely. Suddenly, a sunken hole appeared on the ground, and the whole cave shook slightly. Could it be that you are a baby dragon? The more Chu Bei looked at the little dragon in front of him, the more he felt that it was similar to the baby dragon in the storyline. Thinking of this, Chu Bei could not help but laugh. The baby dragon was once an incarnation of the first-generation god of light. Its original form was the great mighty heavenly dragon. In ancient times, due to discovering the secret of faith, it was heavily injured by the Black Hand Guang Yuan. It fell from the highest level of heavenly dragon to the lowest level of earth dragon. It also lost its memories. In the original storyline, the baby dragon whose realm had fallen greatly would fight with the wild beasts in the mountains for food. It would continuously undergo nirvana and become a 5th-level holy dragon until it was brought to the academy by an elder of the Divine Dragon Academy. However, because of its arrival, the storyline changed. What baby dragon? I don't understand what you are talking about. The little dragon glared at Chu Bei angrily. Then, with a swoosh, it appeared in front of Chu Bei and stretched out its claws towards Chu Bei's chest. Bang! However, the moment the little dragon's claws were about to touch Chu Bei's chest, a light wall appeared out of thin air. The huge rebounding force sent it flying. He disappeared. In midair, the little dragon immediately flapped its wings to stabilize its body. However, just as it was about to launch its second attack, the figure of that person disappeared from its sight. In the next moment, dense light dots appeared around the little dragon. Its face was filled with vigilance. However, before it could do anything, the light dots condensed into a huge palm. With a bang, the huge palm grabbed the baby dragon's head with lightning speed and lifted it up in the air like a chick. Let go of me. Let go of me. Fear appeared on the baby dragon's face. It struggled with all its might, its body swinging back and forth in the air. However, it was unable to break free from the huge palm. At this moment, the person who disappeared earlier appeared again, looking at it with a mocking expression. You want that jade scepter? Is it because it has an aura that you like? Can it speed up your cultivation? Chu Bei pinched the baby dragon's cheeks with a smile on his face. The baby dragon nodded. When it looked at Chu Bei again, its eyes were filled with fear. I don't want it anymore. Let go of me and I will disappear immediately. Yo, you're quite self-aware. Chu Bei was amused by the baby dragon's silly and cute expression. How could he let the baby dragon escape when it was already in his hands? Not to mention whether it would be of help to him when it grew up. Just for Chen Nan's sake, he had to keep this little guy. Little guy, I'll bring you to meet someone. He has an aura that you like. Moreover, the aura on his body is endless and inexhaustible. Chu Bei raised his eyebrows at the baby dragon and guided it patiently. The jade scepter attracted the baby dragon because of the divine demon aura it contained. As long as the Tai Chi God demon diagram in Chen Nan's body was activated, there would be as much divine demon aura as he wanted. Really? The baby dragon's eyes lit up when it heard Chu Bei's worsening condition. Its voice was filled with excitement. You'll know if I'm lying to you when we get there. With that, Chu Bei grabbed the baby dragon and disappeared from the cave. 15 minutes later. The Tai Chi God demon diagram has awakened. At the edge of a call, Chu Bei glanced at the unconscious Chen Nan and said to the nameless divine demon, There's another type of energy in his body. This energy is very magical. I actually feel a sense of unfamiliarity. It's as if this energy doesn't belong to us. I've never come into contact with it before. The nameless divine demon flapped its wings and Chen Nan's body instantly lit up. Upon closer inspection, the two light balls in Chen Nan's chest were spinning rapidly. A golden pill was floating in the middle of the two light balls. Do you see it? It's this little thing. It's neither an immortal treasure nor divine demon aura, but it can suppress the Tai Chi God demon diagram. Under its effect, the Tai Chi God demon diagram seems to have become unusually stable. The nameless divine demon pointed at the golden pill. With this little guy doesn't have to worry about the Tai Chi God demon diagram's backlash. That's an opportunity one gave him. It's a product from beyond the heavens, Chu Bei said plainly. Since the Tai Chi God demon diagram has awakened, let him wake up. A product from beyond the heavens? The nameless divine demon murmured and didn't ask further. Then, a huge amount of energy entered Chen Nan's body from his fingertip. In the next moment, Chen Nan suddenly opened his eyes. His body seemed to shiver as he jumped to the ground. What did you do to me? Chen Nan looked at the nameless divine demon and questioned. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura on his body increased at a terrifying speed. Stage 2 Mahayana, Stage 3 Minor Mahayana, Stage 3 Intermediate Mahayana, Stage 3 Mahayana. The energy in Chen Nan's body only gradually stabilized when he reached Stage 4 Mahayana. Master, my cultivation. What's going on? Sensing his aura skyrocketing, Chen Nan looked at Chu Bei in shock. Consider it as me opening the door of opportunity for you in advance. Chu Bei looked at Qin Nan calmly. Carefully feel the changes in your body and see if there's any difference from before. Hearing this, Qin Nan nodded and immediately used his divine consciousness to check his body. That pill of light and 2 rotating balls of light. They seem to be helping me temper my body, Qin Nan said in disbelief. With their help, your cultivation speed will be several times faster, Chu Bei replied calmly. The person you're talking about is him, right? At this moment, the baby dragon suddenly poked its little head out from behind Chu Bei and pointed its claws at the Tai Chi godly demon diagram in Qin Nan's body. I like the aura coming from there. If you like it, you can follow him from now on. Chu Bei patted the baby dragon's head. Okay. Baby dragon responded in a childish voice, then eagerly moved to Qin Nan's side. Its nose kept sniffing, and it had an intoxicated expression on its face. Master, this little guy is? Qin Nan glanced at the baby dragon and asked Chu Bei with his mouth twitched. Don't think that it's nothing now. It will be a great help to you in the future. Chu Bei tidied up his clothes. From now on, it's your companion. Take good care of it. It will bring you good luck. The nameless god fiend sized up the baby dragon, and a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. He seemed to have seen through the other party's origins. Is there anything else I can help you with? The nameless demon looked at Chu Bei and asked seriously. That's enough. We should go out now. Chu Bei shook his head and waved his hand. The golden light that sealed the young experts of the 4 academies disappeared. Lord Demon God, I heard that you've been looking for a successor. I'm lucky to meet you today. I wonder if this kid can catch your eye. After the young experts got their freedom, they immediately bowed to the nameless demon god. Only Meng Ke walked behind Chu Bei and stared at the nameless demon god vigilantly. If you guys didn't come in with him, you'd be a pile of bones now. The nameless fiend god pointed at Chu Bei. His deep and hoarse voice resounded in the ears of the group of young experts, and a terrifying pressure shook their hearts. After he shouted, the nameless demon god nodded at Qin Nan and disappeared in the rolling black fog. The mountain was still the same, but the thick fog at the top of the mountain had disappeared. The death flower, the white bones, and the enchantment around the mountain had disappeared. The death impasse had disappeared. Your aura. Meng Ke noticed the change in Qin Nan and opened her mouth wide. Before they came, his cultivation was only at rank 2. But now, he was at rank 4 Mahayana realm. It had only been an hour. Brother Qin, you didn't get the inheritance of the nameless demon god, did you? When the young experts heard Meng Ke's soft voice, their attention fell on Qin Nan. When they sensed his vigorous aura, their expressions changed at the same time. Qin Nan glanced at the young experts and didn't reply. Since Chu Bei found him, he knew that he wasn't on the same path as these guys. Swoosh! Swoosh! Suddenly, several air-piercing sounds were heard. The vice-principals of the 4 academies, Chu Ao, and other experts arrived one after another. Brother, hug me. Little Qinshi flew from Chu Yu's arms to Qin Nan. When she saw the baby dragon, her eyes lit up. What a cute little dragon. You're the cute one. The baby dragon whined in its childish voice, allowing little Qinshi to grab its dragon horn with her little white hand. Chapter 367. Master, where are we going now? Are we going to find Yusin? Qin Nan hugged little Dawn and gulped. Haven't you always wanted to see Yusin? I'll take you there now. Chu Bei patted Qin Nan. If this mission wasn't related to Corpse King Yusin, he would have delayed it. Senior, are you leaving just like that? Looking at the direction where Chu Bei and the others disappeared, Chu Ao shouted. However, no one responded for a long time. Why is the opening time of the Land of Death so short this year? It hasn't even been 2 hours. Yifeng glanced at the group of young experts and questioned. The group of young people looked at each other. Then Menkure stepped forward and said, "The nameless fiend god's inheritance seems to have been given to Brother Chen. His cultivation has reached the 4th stage of the Great Ascension stage." "Seems?" The vice principal of the Phantom Academy frowned. "What do you mean? We didn't see the nameless fiend god's inheritance with our own eyes." "That's because after that, old senior isolated us, and only released us after the inheritance was completed." Menkure pursed her lips and said, "Moreover, the senior seemed to know the nameless fiend god. To be exact, the nameless fiend god was very polite to the senior. This feeling is indescribable. It's like a junior facing a senior." Hiss. Hearing Menkure's words, Chueo and the other vice principals looked at each other and gasped at the same time. Who on earth was this old senior? Fengdu Mountain. This was the tallest mountain in the mountain range in the southwest of the Chu country. Throughout the entire Tianxian continent, no one didn't know Fengdu Mountain because it was a famous ghost mountain. During the day, the whole mountain range was gloomy and ghostly howls were endless. At night, it was like hell with ghostly flames and ghosts. There were rumors that when the Fantasy Immortal and Fantasy continents were first connected, the East and the West fought for nearly 1,000 years. The corpses of tens of millions of soldiers were buried in Fengdu Mountain. Because of this legend, Fengdu Mountain became the ghost land with the most energy in the eyes of all the cultivators on the continent. To ordinary people, Fengdu Mountain was a place of evil and evil. However, to the ancient sect, the Chasing Corpse sect, this place was a paradise. There was no other reason. The descendants of the Chasing Corpse sect could excavate countless perfect corpses from this place, and refine these corpses into a great fighting force. I didn't expect that after more than 1,000 years, the Chasing Corpse sect that was once destroyed would come back to life. Not only that, they even brazenly send out invitations for the heroes of the world to attend their grand opening ceremony. In the past, the 3 invincible corpses of the Chasing Corpse sect shocked the world. They were comparable to deities. I wonder if they are still around. According to the news from the Great Path, the Chasing Corpse sect also sent out their current successor to the competition between the successors of the Great Sacred Grounds a few days ago. That successor is called Gu Shi. Although his cultivation is similar to Huntian Path's Xiang Tian and Delirium Holy Land's Menkure, he used an ancient strange corpse to sweep everyone. Speaking of the Holy Land competition, I was there. Xiang Tian and Menkure worked together but still couldn't take down Gu Shi. It can be said that the Chasing Corpse sect successfully used Gu Shi to launch their first attack. Didn't they say that the Chasing Corpse sect's grand opening ceremony would reveal the corpse of a demon god? It is said that the demon god's corpse can kill a 6th stage expert with a raise of its hand. In a tea house at the foot of Fengdu Mountain, there were 3 to 5 cultivators gathered at each table, discussing the hottest topic of the day. Master, didn't you say that you would bring me to see Yusin? Why did you come to the Chasing Corpse sect? Chen Nan was confused. She is in the Chasing Corpse sect. Chu Bei looked at Chen Nan calmly. When you see Yusin, if you can't suppress the anger in your heart, then release it. With your current cultivation, your light talent, and the divine weapon that you exchanged in the All Heavens shop, there are not many people in the Tianxian continent who can stop you. Master, what do you mean? Hearing Chu Bei's words, Chen Nan had a bad feeling and frowned. There are some things that you can only see with your own eyes. Chu Bei shook his head and sighed. He was still very angry about what the Chasing Corpse sect had done to Yusin. To be more precise, he hated the Chasing Corpse sect. As a human, the dead were the most important. However, the Chasing Corpse sect liked to make a fuss about corpses and would not even let them go. Master, did they do something to Yusin? Chen Nan clenched his fist tightly and did not dare to continue his guess. He was afraid that Chu Bei's reply would be exactly what he was thinking. Maybe the result is not as bad as you think, Chu Bei said calmly. Now, he only hoped that the Chasing Corpse sect would not go overboard. Brother, look, there are so many bones here. Little Chen Shi hugged Chen Nan's arm and pouted. Also, something in the mountain seems to be calling me. Fengdu Mountain was indeed worthy of the name of Ghost Mountain. Chu Bei and the rest had just stepped into the mountain range when they saw hundreds of eerie white bones. Looking around, broken bones could be seen everywhere under the trees, in the withered grass, and beside the mountain rocks. Calling you? Chen Nan mumbled and looked at Chu Bei. He pursed his lips. Is it Yusin? There's an unbreakable bond between the two of them. Chu Bei nodded. Since it was the opening ceremony of the Chasing Corpse sect, more and more cultivators flocked to the manor that was opened by the Chasing Corpse sect. The manor was located in a valley surrounded by 3 mountains. It occupied a large area. Other than being a little gloomy, the surroundings were quite beautiful. At this moment, the manor was filled with people. The high platform in the center was used for the opening ceremony. Countless experts from various sects gathered around the high platform and took their seats in an orderly manner. Among these people, there were many elders from the Holy Lands, and even some disciples of the evil path. The reason why the Chasing Corpse sect could attract so many people this time was mostly due to the battle between Gu Shi, Meng Ke, and Xiang Tian a few days ago. Chu Bei brought Chen Nan and Chen Shi to a random place to sit and waited quietly for the ceremony to begin. Everyone, thank you for coming to the opening ceremony of the Chasing Corpse sect today. Our sect has been silent for 1,000 years. Today, we're going to make a high-profile appearance. In just a few days, our Chasing Corpse sect will regain the glory of 1,000 years ago. 2 hours later, a stooped old man appeared on the high platform. After exchanging pleasantries with everyone, he waved his sleeves and 2 long rainbows streaked across the mountains. In the blink of an eye, 2 four-winged angels appeared in the sky above the manor. One of them was as white as snow, while the other was as black as ink. To be exact, these were the corpses of 2 powerful angels. It's recorded in our sect's records that they're the Chasing Corpse sect's Black Baron and White Baron. I didn't expect these 2 strange corpses to still be here after 1,000 years. It seems like the Chasing Corpse sect's strength hasn't declined. Even if they only have these 2 strange corpses, their strength is still far superior to many famous sects. I wonder if the legendary 3 invincible ancient corpses have been preserved. If they're preserved, then the Chasing Corpse sect's foundation is really terrifying. Let alone us, even those holy lands are no match for them. The moment the 2 strange corpses appeared above the manor, most of the people around the high platform revealed looks of surprise. Of course, there were a few people who only glanced at the 2 strange corpses before shifting their gazes away. We came from afar, yet you're bringing out White Baron and Black Baron for this grand opening ceremony? Isn't that a little insincere? Can't you invite the legendary 3 invincible ancient corpses for us to take a look? One of the Holy Land's elders stood up and asked. Although these 2 strange corpses were powerful, they were only at the early Type 5 human realm. In their Holy Lands there were quite a number of Type 5 experts. If the 3 invincible ancient corpses of the Chasing Corpse sect were not preserved, then the various Holy Lands would have to come up with a plan to suppress or even annihilate the Chasing Corpse sect. However, if the 3 invincible ancient corpses were preserved, then they would have to redefine the strength of the Chasing Corpse sect and come up with a new plan. Hearing the words of the Holy Land's elder, the stooped old man from the Chasing Corpse sect laughed. To be honest, our sect did once have 3 invincible ancient corpses. However, one of them was destroyed 2,000 years ago, and now there are only 2 left. Moreover, summoning these 2 ancient corpses will consume a lot of our resources, so I'm afraid we'll have to disappoint everyone today. At this point, the stooped old man suddenly changed the topic. Although you won't be able to see the invincible ancient corpses, you'll be able to see the even more powerful Corpse King. Corpse King? It's even more powerful than the 3 invincible ancient corpses. I've never heard of the Chasing Corpse sect having such a strange corpse. As soon as the stooped old man finished speaking, the cultivators around the high platform stood up at the same time, and the discussion became more intense. Master, the Corpse King he's talking about can't be. Chen Nan's body trembled. Chu Bei did not reply. He only narrowed his eyes, and a sharp killing intent was faintly discernible. "The Corpse King is born!" the stooped old man shouted, and 16 old men from the depths of the manor leaped onto the high platform. Under everyone's gaze, the 16 old men held strange magic weapons in their hands, and their figures changed in a strange pace while chanting at the same time. However, due to the distance, it was impossible to hear what they were chanting. Rumble! When the 16 old men stopped moving, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the high platform. In the next moment, a deep gully appeared in the center of the circle formed by the 16 old men, and a crystal coffin slowly floated out of the gully. Under the sunlight, the crystal coffin sparkled, and there was a faint flow of strange colors. "Oh my God! Those are all treasures! These guys are actually willing to feed so many heaven and earth treasures to a coffin. What a waste of heaven's treasures!" Seeing the chasing corpse's generosity, even the elders of the various sacred lands could not help but sigh. The immortal ginseng, lingji, mystic fruits, and human-shaped Chinese knotweed piled up around the crystal coffin were decreasing at a visible speed. At the same time, the crystal coffin became more and more sparkling and translucent. Could it be that the Corpse King is in this crystal coffin? Is it really more powerful than the 3 invincible ancient corpses? This is the first time I've seen the chasing corpse corpse summoning ceremony. It's really eye-opening. Who knows the origin of this Corpse King? Since it can become a Corpse King, it must have been a powerful figure when it was alive. I'm really looking forward to it. The cultivators below the stage locked their eyes on the crystal coffin, anxiously waiting for the moment when the coffin lid opened. "Awaken the corpse." When the hunchbacked old man spat out 2 heavy syllables, the 16 old men on the stage jumped around the crystal coffin and knocked on the artifacts. Under the waiting of countless people present, the sacrificial ceremony entered a critical period, and the energy fluctuations on the 16 old men became more and more tyrannical. Rumble! With a low rumble, the crystal coffin on the altar floated into the air, and then the lid of the coffin shook. Light flowed through the gaps, and various colors intertwined. Bang! With a loud bang, the crystal coffin lid exploded. In an instant, the blue sky above the manor was illuminated by the colors in the coffin and turned blood-red. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, the blood-red sky turned ink-black again, like the dark abyss of hell, giving off a gloomy and terrifying feeling. "Control the corpse." The hunchbacked old man shouted again, and immediately, a pitch-black iron chain appeared in the hands of the 16 old men. Each of them threw one end of the iron chain into the crystal coffin. "Everyone, what do you think a Corpse King would look like?" The hunchbacked old man smiled, and his smug gaze swept across the crowd below the stage. "Is there even a need to ask? Since it's a Corpse King, it must have an endless amount of death aura, and its entire body is ice-cold. I've seen a few corpses of your chasing corpse sect, and they're all dried-up corpses, extremely disgusting. A Corpse King should be the corpse of an ancient divine demon. After being refined by you, I'm afraid its face is hideous, and its limbs are twisted." The crowd below the stage scrambled to express their opinions. When he heard the hunchbacked old man's baffling question, Chin Nan's expression turned even uglier. If not for Chu Bei, who was beside him, hinting for him to wait, he would have already flown above the crystal coffin to see what was going on. Whoosh! With a piercing sound, a ball of white light slowly flew out from the crystal coffin. As the light was too blinding, it was impossible to see what was inside. The only thing that could be seen were the 16 pitch-black chains in the hands of the chasing corpse elder. "Old man, don't keep us in suspense. Who will be able to see the Corpse King's appearance like this?" One of the sacred land elders below the stage expressed his dissatisfaction. "Don't be hasty." As the hunchbacked old man's voice fell, 2 blood-red lights appeared in the dazzling white light, and the blood-red lights coldly swept across the crowd. When they saw the 2 blood-red lights, the crowd below the stage could not help but shudder, and a chill ran down their spines. Brother, she's the one who summoned me. I can sense her aura, and it's similar to mine. When I see her, I feel like crying. At that moment, little Chinchi looked at the blurry figure in the sky, and subconsciously hugged Chinnan's neck. Tears rolled down from her big, watery eyes uncontrollably. Master, she's Yusin, right? Although the boundless aura of death has covered everything that I was once familiar with, I can still vaguely sense the connection between me and her. But didn't you tell me that she's still alive? How did she become the chasing corpse king? Chinnan stared blankly at the dazzling white light floating above the stage, and his heart was filled with endless sorrow. He kept muttering, as if questioning Chu Bei, who was beside him, "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."